guys, welcome and welcome back to the podcast. I've been meaning to watch that. I'm your host Monica. We are back again with a new week, a new topic, and a new guest like we do every single week. And this week we have a brand new guest with us today. It is a very special guest. I am very excited to speak with her today, and I'm going to go ahead and let her introduce herself to you guys.
Hi guys, I'm Kimberly, or Kim, most people call me Kim, and I'm a film and TV reporter, but I make TikTok videos, and this is how me and Monica met. A lot of my TikTok videos tend to be centered around whatever films are coming out at the time and really trying to get to the core of what the film is actually about. I think at the moment, especially in this age of TikTok where we get very fast content, we might want really easy and quick reviews, but I try to the best of my ability, I try to kind of pick at something that's a bit more interesting in a film and focus on it so that we can have a bigger conversation about it. So if you want to see some of my videos, if you want to hear some of my insights on films, on television, or on anything to do with pop culture, I am on TikTok at Kimberly Titi. I'll try and have this written somewhere because it's quite a difficult username. But yes, I'm really excited to be here too, Monica.
Awesome. Kimberly, thank you so much for coming on. It is such an honor to have you on the show. I'm so happy to have you on today. And guys, we're going to be talking about something very interesting today. I'm not sure if many of you have noticed, but there has been a certain media trend that has been on the rise in a lot of newer forms of television and films. And I think it's something that we can call it the effect of like the doppelganger effect, where many new TV shows or movies, whether it's new or maybe it's been out for a while, they seem to feature actors playing themselves or playing a different variation of the character that they're playing in the media. So I want to dive into this with Kimberly today because I feel like it's a very interesting thing to explore. And we're going to be touching on Severance, we're going to be touching on Mickey 17, and the most recent release in theaters, Sinners. But before we get into the Doppelganger effect and talking about that, we're going to go ahead and dive into our first segment, which is Media Mania, where we talk about new releases and entertainment news that are coming out. And the first piece of entertainment news that I wanted to discuss is all around Shannon Sharpe. Now, if you don't know who Shannon Sharpe is, I am honestly surprised that you don't know who he is because he is a fairly popular SBN commentator, and he has been popular for a very long time. So recently, Shannon Sharpe was in the news because there was a lawsuit filed against him. So just to give you guys a pretty concise summary of the situation and to let you know what's going on, Shannon Sharpe, who is known as an SBN, contributor, and also has his very popular podcast, Club Shay Shay, which has had a lot of very popular and very well-known celebrities and public figures on there. He has announced that he is stepping away from his SBN duties amid a $50 million civil lawsuit accusing him of sexual assault and battery. Shannon Sharpe, who regularly appears on First Take, stated that the relationship in question was 100% consensual and called the allegations false and disruptive. And he said that he would return to SBN at the start of the NFL preseason. And this lawsuit that was filed in Nevada accuses Sharpe of assaulting a woman under the alias of Jane Doe, twice beginning a relationship with her when she was 19 years old. And the plaintiff alleges Sharpe became abusive and threatened her and recorded sexual encounters without consent. And Sharpe has denied all claims, calling the case a blatant setup. And this also follows a recent controversy where he accidentally live streamed himself having sex on Instagram Live, which he apologized for, and he was not disciplined for, but it did add scrutiny to his public persona. So I remember hearing this news on TikTok, of course, because we were talking about how the girl is an OnlyFans star, and, obviously her age was a huge issue. But Kimberly, I was wondering if you know about this news and like your thoughts on this.
I do know about this news. Yeah, I've seen it absolutely everywhere since it came out. I think it's obviously a very sensitive subject to like discuss any ongoing legal battle, etc. But I think the general consensus, at least from like the people that I follow and the people I've spoken to, is that the age gap was inappropriate. Like starting there, when it was consensual, when the relationship was consensual, the age gap was always inappropriate. I think for somebody in their 50s to be with a teenager or a 20-year-old is clearly just, there is a very obvious power imbalance there. But I think that the case itself it's just so sensitive, isn't it? And I think, with Shannon Sharpe, I watched the video where he kind of speaks about the fact that this lawyer previously dealt with Jay-Z, or was the one behind accusations against Jay-Z. And I think, this stance of being like, well, he's just trying to take down Black men. It's just so silly. Like, we're not buying it. Nobody is seeing this and thinking this is just a lawyer that's out to take down Black men. I'm sure there's more to it. And obviously we've seen some of the clips and some of the messages between them, which are very suggestive. I think I should say that, of some of the things that went down in that relationship. So my bottom line is I really hope that this goes somewhere and there is actually justice that comes out of it, and it isn't, this big social media conversation and then completely disappears. That's the last thing I want. I think, the woman, I forget her name, I hope that she gets the justice that she deserves.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And I know that the attorney who is on the case, his name is Tony Busby, and I think every so often there is that one lawyer that for some reason takes on the most public facing cases. Yeah, with the most well-known figures attached to it. And I guess our generation is Tony Busby, but there have been a plethora of others. And I find that whenever a well-known Black celebrity does the whole they're trying to bring a Black man down kind of thing, that immediately to me signals, that doesn't seem genuine.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I don't doubt there are people who do try to undercut Black entertainers, but Shannon Sharpe has more than once on his show been called out for favoring younger women. Monique has said before that when she was being interviewed by him, she told him you should be getting an older woman that will settle with you and take care of you. And Cat Williams also joked about it as well when he was being interviewed by Shannon Sharpe. And the age gap is incredibly alarming, and it is really disturbing and honestly just gross. It's nasty that you want to date somebody who's just legal, fresh into the lifeblood of adulthood. It honestly, I just find it really gross and very disturbing, and it always makes me roll my eyes whenever I see an older man with someone who is so young, this young girl who is referred to as Jane Doe in the articles that I've read. She's younger than his children, who are adults,
Yeah.
And I do hope that she gets the retribution that she deserves. I hope that she, receives justice and that she isn't too hurt from the lawsuit and everything. And I hope it doesn't drag out too much. But also, I hope that people, I know that this may not happen, but I do want people to stop going on Club Shay Shay, because I don't see him as a strong journalist or a strong interviewer. As many people have said before, is he a good sports commentator? I don't know, because I don't watch sports. I don't watch First Take. That's not my show. I'm not the audience for that. But I feel when it comes to his interviewing style, especially when he talks to well-known public figures, he does not have the talent. He does not have the creative mindset for it, and I don't feel he knows how to carry a conversation well. The only reason why his interviews go viral is because of the people he's interviewing, and because of the moments that happen when he's interviewing these people. Everyone saw that he spoke with Monique and then Cat Williams, and then people wanted to go on the couch and, talk to him as well. And I have never watched a Club Shay Shay video for more than 5 minutes, because in order to really care about what's going on in an interview, you have to care about the guest and the interviewer as well. And if the interviewer, if the host does not have any kind of personality, doesn't have any way to connect with the audience, doesn't have a way of actually asking thoughtful and, thought-provoking questions to the person they're interviewing, and you're just talking to them you're at a barbecue, then maybe you don't need the set. Maybe you don't need all this, production to do that. Maybe you could just have a conversation with them on Instagram Live like people were having during the pandemic,
That's true.
Yeah.
I do wonder how much money he makes. Maybe it's irrelevant, but I wonder how much money he makes on his YouTube, because it's always on Club Shay Shay. It's always going viral. And you're right, it goes viral because it's some of the biggest people, biggest celebrities in Hollywood sitting down and having very unconventional conversations that they wouldn't have on like a proper interview set with like a real journalist. Not that he's not a real journalist, but
Yeah. I think that Shannon Sharpe has kind of ridden on the coattails of him going viral. Like, I don't know what year it was, maybe 2017, 2016, when he went on First Take with like a do-rag and a cigar, and he looked absolutely ridiculous, but people thought it was funny. And then him just continuing on that persona and people thinking of him as Uncle Shannon Sharpe. And now Uncle Shannon Sharpe is in trouble and he should be held accountable for his alleged actions,
Yeah, 100%.
Yes. So I do hope that the Jane Doe is all right and that things do resolve from there. Because it's such a high profile case, it's currently in the discovery phase, so no criminal charges have been filed. And it looks like both sides are currently preparing for a high profile civil trial. So we'll see what happens. And considering that Shannon Sharpe is a very prominent figure in sports media, I mean, he's an NFL Hall of Famer. So this trial is definitely going to take a lot of precedence, or it's going to take a lot of it's going to be very public, I guess I should say.
Yeah, 100%.
So moving on to the next story, this was something that I saw a little while ago and I did want to touch on it because I felt like it was very interesting, but John Boyega, he appeared on the new Apple TV original documentary, #1 on the call sheet, Black Leading Men in Hollywood. And during the interview, he was talking about, being a part of the Star Wars franchise, as he debuted as Finn in Star Wars The Force Awakens. And he was the same character in The Last Jedi and in Rise of Skywalker. And he spoke about how it was very difficult to be a Black actor playing the lead in this space franchise. And the article quotes him as saying, "Let me tell you, Star Wars always had the vibe of being the most whitest elite space. It's a franchise that's so white that a Black person existing in it was something. You can always tell it's something when some Star Wars fans try to say, well, we had Lando Calrissian and had Samuel L. Jackson. It's like telling me how many cookie chips are in the cookie dough. It's like they're just scattered in there, bro." And as someone who has been a Star Wars fan for many years, I think that, like, it's not anything new that Star Wars fans are, racist, and that, like, the Star Wars space and also fandom space in general is known to be a bit racist, because it was not only him who was dealing with backlash, it was also Kelly Marie Tran, who I think her breakout role was in The Last Jedi. So it is refreshing to see him talk about this in like such an open space. And I know he's discussed this before and he's talked about it before, but, after 2020, when, Black Lives Matter had risen back into popularity once again, Disney did the very PC thing of being like, we're listening, we hear you, we care, we understand, which is total corporate BS, as in, we're sorry you let our Black actor get harassed by our fans that we ultimately pander to at the end of the day because we need their money. But I was wondering, Kimberly, if you had noticed this, because as a Star Wars fan, it was something that I was worried about from the time The Force Awakens movie was announced, and I was like, oh, this is going to be a wild ride. So I was just curious to get your take on that.
I'm really conflicted about not just in terms of Star Wars, but about Black actors being cast in these really huge fandoms. I'm very, very conflicted about it because I think it's good. Obviously, we want to be in mainstream media. We want to be the face of like really big productions. However, it feels like a setup. Every single time that I see this, I feel like the actors are being set up to fail. And it makes me think of, I don't know if you remember when there was this girl that played Romeo and Juliet here in London in the West End.
Yes.
And she faced some of the most horrible racism I've seen online. And Romeo and Juliet, I mean, Juliet and Romeo and Juliet has been played by so many people of all sorts of different colors because it's a play and theatre doesn't really operate in the same way. But I think with these fandoms, when you look at places, you know, fandoms like Harry Potter and Star Wars and these just like larger than life spaces, it does to me feel like the Black actor or actress is being set up, especially if the production company doesn't offer any kind of backing or support or doesn't address when these things happen. To me, it feels like a setup. At the same time, I do want us to be in these things and I do want us to be at the front of these productions, but there is no production company that doesn't know the audience that they are targeting. They know their audience and they know historically what has happened when Black actors and Black actresses have been even suggested for big roles. I mean, something as, I don't want to say stupid, but really something as stupid as playing a mermaid, like a fictional mermaid, left Halle Bailey just being attacked online, a mermaid. And so it's like, and I mean, even Star Wars, these are like super fictional, mystical characters, but that's still such a point of contention for fans. And so I think I'm conflicted. I want us to be at the forefront. I want us to be represented. I don't want us to be represented in spaces where we are going to be attacked no matter what.
I definitely agree with you because as someone who has been in fandom spaces for like since her adolescence, it is definitely a space where it's difficult to find community. A lot of people that exist in these spaces are incredibly privileged and oftentimes the most narrow-minded people you'll ever meet. Like, I remember being on Twitter and how Black girl nerds, like the Twitter page, would have to try and push back against racist fans because they didn't like the fact that their organization was called Black Girl Nerds because they felt like they couldn't enjoy the space or they couldn't be a part of it. And the reason why it's called Black Girl Nerds is because the fandom space as a whole is so isolating to fans of color, especially like Black fans, as we deal with so much anti-Blackness within the fandom space, that we need a designated area for community in a place where we feel like we belong. And so more than anything, of course, you want to see yourself represented in the media that you watch. And it is disheartening to see fans that watch the same show as you, that exist in the same spaces as you, and are, you know, spinning vitriol and hatred to these actors that are playing fictional characters at the end of the day. I remember the show on the CW Flash, or The Flash, they casted Candice Patton to play the Flash's girlfriend, and she experienced so much harassment online from fans throughout the run of the show just because she is a Black woman. And people kept acting like Grant Gustin was like, you know, marred by the fact that he had to kiss a Black woman, even though he didn't care. He likes her. He thinks she's a good actress. And it's very, you know, discouraging to see that. And it's honestly, it gets to a point where it's annoying because fandom, you know, hyperfixates on fictional stories, fictional characters. Star Wars exists in time and space. And you have characters like C-3PO, you have, you know, Wookiees, like you have fictional characters that walk around with fur all over their bodies. You know, it's not hard to believe that a Black person can pick up a lightsaber and be a Jedi. That's not the craziest thing that can happen in the universe because Star Wars exists in comics and movies and TV shows. The universe is incredibly vast. So for people that have a problem with Black actors, it's absolutely ridiculous. And I do agree with you to like a certain extent that like a lot of times whenever these actors, you know, are cast in these big franchises, it does feel like a setup sometimes, especially if the company is not willing to clap back against these fans. or if the lead actors for whatever TV show or film they are a part of does not stand beside their black actors and, speak out against the negative reception of their casting. And I remember when the Obi-Wan Kenobi show came out, Ewan McGregor, he was openly, calling out racist Star Wars fans because the actress Moses Ingram, who previously was on The Queen's Gambit on Netflix, she got cast in Obi-Wan Kenobi. And he was, talking about how these fans, these are not Star Wars fans. Like, you guys cannot be racist towards her. She's an incredible actress. Like, this is not fair to her as she is joining the Star Wars franchise. And more actors should be doing that. Like, more actors should speak up and speak out against the vitriol that their peers, that their co-stars are getting from these fans that are supporting their work, and not even like supporting the work wholeheartedly, because these same fans will like praise these white actors and then put down the actors of color as if they are lesser than, or as if they don't deserve these same roles. And it's infuriating to see. And I still want, well-known actors of color to be in these franchises, because these are amazing opportunities nonetheless, and I want them to get that kind of like exposure and have the chance to be part of even more roles. But in turn, you do see that a lot of actors of color who are part of these franchises and deal with, this hate and this vitriol, sometimes do not gain the same publicity or the same exposure or are given the same opportunities as their white counterparts, which is also very discouraging. So sometimes it feels like a double-edged sword, because it's not their fault that like people are racist, but studios are more focused on guaranteed hits and, unproblematic superstars to lead their films, because they don't want to have to clap back against these racist fans, because at the end of the day, they just want their money.
Exactly. Literally.
Yeah. And I love John Boyega. I think he's a phenomenal actor. I loved him in The Woman King. And he is he is like on my list of actors where it's like, I need you in something like I need you in something big. I need Jordan Peele, Boots Riley, Dee Rees. I need Gina Prince Bythewood to call him back again. Call him back into the fold. Like, I need somebody to take this man under their wing and like make him something. He needs a Jordan Peele. He needs his, his director counterpart, so to speak. And like Kelly Marie Tran, she's in The Wedding Banquet, which is a film that's out right now that I have yet to see, but I heard it's very good. So I'm glad that she's in that movie with Lily Gladstone. I think Bowen Yang is also in that film. So obviously, they're not star for roles. Kelly Marie Tran was also in a horror movie on Hulu, so she's doing well. But, I can't help but want more for them, as they've been marred by the Disney Corporation. Yeah.
No, 100%.
But I do really relate to John Boyega's stance, and I see why he's talking about it. I hope he never stops talking about it and speaking about it.
Yeah, 100%. I think they should all just keep talking about it and keep saying, you guys are racist. You're racist. And just keep saying it until these fandoms get tired of it, because it's, like you said, it's boring now. We keep doing this over and over again.
Yeah. And I think that fans just need to kind of, at this point, you need to get over it.
Exactly.
Like, at this point, like, it's not going to be the same thing as it was in the 90s or whenever the first Star Wars movie came out. Well, I guess the 90s was the prequels, so the 80s is, like, the originals. Yeah. So,
yeah.
Things
like, it's 2025. It's literally 2025. You're going to have to get over it.
Yeah, you're going to have to move on and just accept the fact that, like, Black people may be cast in your favorite, movies and TV shows based off of your favorite books or comics, and, like, that's just it.
And that's fine, yeah.
That is okay. Yes. So to wrap up Media Mania, just to let you guys know, there are a couple new releases out right now. There's The Legend of Uchi starring, Willem Dafoe. I almost said Gary Oldman, and I was like, oh, that's not the right person. Yes, The Legend of Uchi is out. The Amateur starring Rami Malek. And then there is Warfare starring Kit Connor, Joseph Quinn, Charles Melton. Noah Centineo. I know everybody has seen, that cast all over
Yeah.
their timeline, as I have. And then there is Until Dawn, which is a movie based off of a video game series of the same name. And then there is Drop, which is a movie based off of a woman getting a random text message or a random, I think, airdrop message from someone telling her that she has to kill her date, who she has dinner plans with, which is very interesting. And then you have The Wedding Banquet, like the film that we just spoke about earlier, starring Lily Gladstone, Kelly Marie Tran, and Bowen Yang. So those are the new releases that are out right now. I highly encourage you guys to go out and see them. And as we wrap up Media, we're going to go ahead and dive in to the meat and potatoes of the podcast. We're going to be talking about doppelgangers. And this podcast, I would like to lovingly title it The Year of the Doppelganger, Monsters of Selfhood. And the reason why I wanted to title it that is because it's very interesting to see how many films have been made centered around the doppelganger, because it is known as like a kind of monster of sorts, or a variation of a monster, seeing yourself in like a fractured way. But to see this trope be utilized in TV shows, in movies, in a way where it's not something that is really of an element of horror, but it's a storytelling device. So examining this and examining how it's being used in different films is very interesting to me, and I love it so much. And in doing my research, I realized that the doppelganger, it represents the self-made monstrous through late capitalism's demand to optimize and market lucrative aspects of oneself, which makes sense because, as two people who are on social media, the person that you represent, or the person you kind of pretend to be online, the persona you have, can be very different from the person that you actually are. Some people, maybe they are genuinely themselves online to play up to relatability, but oftentimes people present a certain side of themselves that they don't, that they aren't in real lives. And this, is how, in a way that we try to survive, and a way that we try to navigate, ourself and identity, we realize that authenticity turns into something of a strategy, and that through like social media, through entertainment, through many different ways, we have used self commodification as a way to kind of like, sell ourselves. It's something that is double engineered for consumption. And I feel like in studying the doppelganger and learning more about it and learning more about its roots, I came across this theory based off of a book written by Jeffrey Jerome Cohen, and it's called The Monster Theory. Have you heard of something like that, or have you like heard of Jeffrey Cohen? Yeah.
I had never heard of it. But I think it's very, very interesting.
Yeah.
But I think it's really interesting, yeah.
Yeah, it is very interesting. Just to give you like a little bit of background, essentially like the monster theory is broken into three parts. So the first part is the monster's body is a cultural body. And this just means that monsters aren't random. They reflect the fears at the time and the place they come from. So in today's world, the monster might be a version of ourselves that we split into two. Who we really are, and then the version that we show to the world, whether it's online or at work. And we do this because modern life, it tells us to be marketable, it tells us to be appealing, to be productive, and to do this at all times. And that pressure, it creates a kind of monster in us, and it's the fake, curated version of ourselves that we're constantly performing. And then the second theory within the book is the monster dwells at the gate of difference. That basically means monsters show up when we cross social boundaries. So what's normal and what's not. And the doppelganger, which is a version of yourself, it shows up as a warning, and it blurs the line between your real self and your branded self. It reminds us that society values appearances and performance over authenticity. So we start worrying like, who am I really if I'm always performing? So that's the second theory. And the third one is the monster refuses closure. And this means that the monster can't be fixed or defeated because it comes from problems that haven't been solved. And in the case of, the monster, this is our need to constantly perform, market ourselves, and keep up a perfect image. And that pressure never ends. So the monster, so to speak, keeps coming back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I was, doing research on the two shows in the movie that we're going to be talking about today. Well, two movies, one show that we're talking about. And I think that shows like Severance and the film Mickey 17 makes it a lot more literal, where like, workers are split into separate selves for work and home, or, workers, laborers, are treated as disposable products. So the doppelganger represents the fear that we're losing our true selves to survive in a system that only values our image, or only values the curated version of ourselves.
Yeah, 100%. I think what I find really interesting, the difference between Mickey 17 and Severance and Sinners, I know we're going to get into Sinners soon, is Sinners, Smoke and Stack aren't actually that different. They're not like, I guess, diametrically opposed. They're not completely contrasted in how they behave. They have differences, but then they're a bit more subtle. Whereas something like Mickey 17 and 18 are like just complete opposites. There is almost a severance of the different bodies, which is also the case in Severance, where the innie and the outie are completely different. And I think it's interesting, actually, that Ryan Coogler chose to do the doppelganger thing, but he didn't make them like one of them like super, quiet and never speaks, and the other one super outgoing. Mm-hmm. They kind of have crossovers in their behaviors, but they also have differences, which I think, sets the stage for a more interesting look at what it means in Sinners versus what the doppelgangers mean in Mickey 17 or in Severance.
Yeah, I do agree with you on that. And I feel like Ryan Coogler making them twins also plays into like how people view twins, like they're two separate people, like they're two separate human beings, but people tend to look at them as like copies, so to speak, because of how similar they look. And Smoke and Stack, they are different. And I feel like they have some things that I like about them. Like they both care about family, obviously. They both care about people who are very close to them. And they're both, they're two people that are very bold and unafraid and are willing to take risks. And they are both kind of willing to, I guess, almost like close themselves off to be a lot more relentless in their pursuit for like money and their pursuit for power. They both understand that power is something that is very important and vital in the world that they live in, especially because they're two black men and they're often felt, they know what it feels like to be powerless. So they understand that there are certain things that you need in life so that people will look at you with respect. And sometimes that's money, sometimes those are guns, sometimes that is property, but it's the mindset that they share of by any means necessary they're willing to do that. It's just that Smoke and Stack, they have different boundaries as to like how they will go about it, because I keep getting them mixed up, but like I feel like it's very clear that one of them is a lot more, not, I guess, laissez-faire with how they want to like go about attaining what they want, and the other one is a lot more rigid in like attaining what it is that they desire.
Yeah, I agree. I think Smoke is a little bit more rigid, or the good guy, I suppose we could call him that. But I think that between them, it seems like you were saying, it seems like they share so much of the same vision that even though they're different, you can actually see that there is a deeper connection there in terms of, they have something that they're going towards and they both understand it. And maybe it is because, they're both black men during a time in which it wasn't easy to be a black man. Has it ever been easy to be a black man? Anyway. And so they have that mindset, the both of them. But I do really think that, I don't know, I'm really blown away by Ryan Coogler's writing, because I think the easier thing for a writer when they're doing like the twin thing or they're doing the doppelganger thing is they will write one that is really extroverted and outgoing and, just larger than life. And then they'll write another one who is the complete opposite and really quiet. But there's so much nuance with Smoke and Stack and they don't need these kind of stark differences. They actually have more subtle differences that I think make them much more interesting characters, especially Smoke. I really, really enjoyed Smoke. And Michael B. Jordan, I didn't know he had it like that. I didn't know he could act like that. I didn't know. I put my hands up. I've been watching Michael B. Jordan since he first started acting.
Yes.
And I always thought, he's obviously a good actor.
Mm-hmm.
This, like Sinners, I was like, oh, he's a great actor. I was wrong, clearly. He was so good. Like, you could tell the difference between these characters just physically from the way that he was physically acting. He did such a good job with this.
That's also why, this is a little bit of a tangent, but I feel like a lot of actors need that like actor-director relationship, because many actors, like, they, go from project to project, film to movie, TV show, whatever it might be. And, you get booked, you do an all right job, and you kind of move on with your life. But I feel like there are so many actors within the industry that have such a great talent, that have such great promise, and you really need that collaborator that sees that spark within you that's going to bring it out. Because Daniel Kaluuya, he's been acting for a long time. He was in Skins, most notably he was in Black Mirror, and of course Jordan Peele, he spoke about how like he saw that Black Mirror episode that Daniel Kaluuya was in, and he casted him in Get Out. And from there, Daniel Kaluuya has only gotten better as an actor, but the relationship that he has with Jordan Peele has shown to be incredibly promising to him. And it's not just like Jordan Peele, Daniel Kaluuya, it's also like Martin Scorsese, and I believe like Robert De Niro, and also Martin Scorsese and Leonardo DiCaprio. Like, they both have a really great working relationship. And then like Greta Gerwig and Saoirse Ronan? Yeah. I always get her name mixed up. But I feel like them, but one that I've noticed recently is Carla Gugino. I think so. I think that's her last name. And Michael Flanagan. Because Carla, she has been an actress who's kind of been in like a lot of B-C movies, and nothing has really stood out. But she was in his show, what is it, Midnight Mass, and then she was also in The Fall of the House of Usher, which was his last show with Netflix before cutting off that deal with Netflix and moving on to Amazon Prime. But she was amazing in that show, and she really stood out. And if she didn't have Michael Flanagan, who was an incredible writer, an incredible showrunner, at the helm and really like pushing her forward and like showing how incredible of an actress she is, then she probably would have continued to do like, just kind of subpar projects. So seeing Michael B. Jordan collaborate with Ryan Coogler and be in Sinners also opened my eyes to see like he is an incredible actor, because for a while I just thought he was a good actor. Like even when I would see him in things, I'm like, well, he's doing his thing, he's doing his job. But in Sinners, he really was like giving so much to the role, and it was phenomenal. And it didn't feel like, I think sometimes actors take on certain projects where they feel like, oh, this will prove my worth as an actor. This will prove my skill. And you can tell they're really like going in, they're doing a little too much. And it's like, okay, we can bring it back a bit. Like, we're all in the theater. We get it. You got the job. But Michael B. Jordan really is embodying Smoke and Stack. And there are two different characters. They're nuanced. Like, it doesn't feel like Michael B. Jordan is playing Michael B. Jordan twice. It is like watching Smoke and Stack, two twins, that have known each other for a long time, that have relied on only one another. One is, the schemer and the strategist. One is the protector and, the bodyguard and the muscle. And seeing them work together and seeing Michael B. Jordan bring those characters to life, it was really incredible to see it.
Definitely. And I saw somebody asked him in an interview about, how being a director since having last worked with Ryan Coogler changed the way that he approached being on set. And he said that, some of the scenes he was looking at it through the eyes of a director. And I think that probably helped a lot, because obviously they have such a strong relationship already, where Ryan Coogler can trust that he has someone who's good for the job, and also Michael B. Jordan can trust he's in good hands. And you could tell that their vision somewhere along the way, it just really connected with each other, and it makes such a good film to watch. I think from obviously the casual perspective as just someone watching a film, but also looking at it from the perspective of someone who enjoys direction or who enjoys acting. There's so much to gain from it. It is chef's kiss. Wonderful. I want more of them. Speaking of the whole like director actor collaboration things, who do you think Emerald Fennell is collaborating with? Because I'm guessing her one is what's his name, Jacob Elordi, because she did Saltburn with him, and I think he's going to be in the adaptation of Wuthering Heights. And so I think that's a very interesting collaboration. We'll see where that one goes. We'll keep an eye on that.
I have to be honest in saying that I don't think Emerald Fennell is probably like one of my favorite directors.
She's not mine.
I really did. I think I really did try to give her a chance because she was, I believe, a showrunner at one point for Killing Eve, which is a show that I really, really enjoyed. But looking back at it, I realized the reason why I enjoyed it was because Phoebe Waller-Bridge was a showrunner at one point.
Yeah.
Sorry, my I'm so sorry.
I thought that was my internet. That's fine.
No, it does that sometimes. Hold on. Oh, wait. Oh, hold on. That's so weird. Okay, there we go.
Hey.
Sorry, I don't know what happened. But, oh my gosh. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. No, not
Emerald Fennell.
Emerald Fennell, yes. I really did try to give her a chance from Killing Eve and then from Promising Young Woman, which I know is a divisive film for a lot of people. And I think that, like, there are some parts of Promising Young Woman that work and that are good and have its merits. But I think that Emerald Fennell has... I feel like when it comes to her writing, it's, like, almost there. You know what I mean?
Exactly. That's exactly it. This is exactly how I felt about Promising Young Woman, about Saltburn.
Yep.
I think also about Barbie, although Barbie was not as close to almost being there, but potentially, because she was in Barbie. That's Greta Gerwig I'm thinking of. But yeah, it's like there's so much that's promising about it, and that makes me think, okay, this is going somewhere, and we could get somewhere, and then it just falls flat.
Yeah.
And Emerald, listen, I don't want to talk crazy about you, but this is how I feel.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, I guess her collaborator now is probably Jacob Elordi, isn't it?
And I have to be honest in saying that I don't think that's a good collaboration because I think Jacob Elordi, I think he's a good actor. I've seen a lot of his independent films because I think that if people just watch Saltburn and Euphoria. They kind of just base his acting skill off that. But in the independent films he's been in, he does play like a very good, like, I can't say the word. A very good charismatic man, like someone who's very like manipulative, someone who has a very easy draw. Someone who can pull people in. And because Jacob Elordi is tall and just like conventionally attractive, he has been picking roles in different films that fit into like his own like personal or outward persona that he gives people. But for Emerald Fennell, I'm not sure if she is picking him in a way where she sees the artistic value in working with him or if she sees the aesthetic value in working with him. You know what I mean? Like, maybe she's looking for that pretty boy to hitch onto all of her projects. That way she gets her movie deals to, you know, get an automatic yes to every single time, you know? Because sometimes people do it that way. I mean, not to say that Leonardo DiCaprio is the same, but he is, like, one of the most well-regarded actors in the world. And Martin Scorsese is one of the most known directors in the world, so their connection with one another is very suitable in the way where they are like a dream team. And then you have like Jordan Peele, Danny Kaluuya, who are both incredible Black creatives that have that talent and have that draw, but it doesn't always mean like an automatic yes from studios, because they always will be a little bit hesitant to say yes to black-led stories or original ideas. And I think that Emerald Fennell is looking for the guaranteed yes in Jacob Elordi, and it's not really coming from a creative drive, it's coming from a monetary drive.
Yeah, I can see that. I think when I think of Jacob Elordi, I envision such a big career for him, because he makes me think of early Leonardo, not in terms of like ability, but just the way that Leo was like boxed in those early years where he started acting, and he was like the heartthrob. He was in Romeo and Juliet, and then he was in Titanic, and then when he did The Beach, everybody was just like, this is the worst movie ever. I'm not saying the movie was good, but when he strayed from that path of being the heartthrob, everyone was like, what the hell is going on? And I think Jacob Elordi, and actually I will say the same for Robert Pattinson, who I think, again, in the beginning had that very cookie cutter, heartthrob, love interest kind of roles set up for him. And then he went super indie and just picked the weirdest movies and acted in those to kind of prove himself as an actor. I think Jacob Elordi needs that moment after this, because he has obviously been in other things, but because of Euphoria and because of these super big films like Saltburn that have placed him in that bracket, he needs to now just be like, go and make some super crazy film where, I don't know, like he does something wacky and he actually shows, I'm an actor and I'm good at this.
Yes. And I think that Michael B. Jordan also went through that as well, because he is an attractive man, he's a good actor. But after Fantastic Four, it was clear that a lot of actors who were in that film, they didn't find a lot of strong work. And I think I would have to refresh myself on his IMDb, but like Fruitvale Station really was the film that kind of like pushed him out as a serious actor. And I can't remember exactly when it was. It was probably sometime before or after Black Panther. He did start his own production company, and then he did create a TV show on Netflix about a very original idea. So it was clear that he had, an idea of the fact that like he has box office draw. People will go see his films because he is physically attractive. So now he needs to build up, some stronger credits and, be able to show that he has like leadership quality so that he could be taken seriously in the pitch when he's pitching things, or, be seen as more of like more than just a leading man, more than just eye candy, but like a serious actor, a serious creative, someone who is ready to kind of take Hollywood and take the reins on his career, not just filling in these like, roles of the boyfriend or like, the smart love interest or, whatever else Michael Ealy is doing these days. He wants to be more, not to put down Michael Ealy. He was the first person to get to mind. I'm so sorry, sir. Yeah. Yes. But there are a lot of things that I did love about Sinners. Also, the vampires. I think that they're really amazing. I love that the vampires were singing like old bluegrass music, like Wild Mountain Time. It's such a old and classic song, but their hyperfixation on Miles Kenton's character and wanting to like take his voice, take Sandy's like musical gift. Obviously it's a play on cultural appropriation and how like white people always want to like get in on something that is not their thing, and they always want a piece of a culture that they are not privy to and that they are not a part of, but they feel like because they are seen as like an everyman, they can take whatever they want, because why would anything be restricted to them? And this sense of entitlement is like what kind of leads them to try and steal Sammy away. And I adore like the scene where not adore, but like the scene where Jack O'Connell is singing and all the vampires are like dancing around him. it was really just like incredible because Jack O'Connell said in the interview that like he doesn't have a lot of musical gift. He doesn't have musical ability, but because Ludwig, who was the composer for Black Panther, is also the composer for Sinners. His talent and the way that he composed the scene and the way that he directed Jack O'Connell is really what brought the song to like such haunting levels. And I just had to bring that up because as a musical theater nerd, whenever I hear such good musical composition, I'm on the edge of my seat. I'm like, this is everything.
The musical composition was insane. I think, you know how at the beginning I was saying, when I walked out of Sinners, I genuinely felt like this is the best movie I've ever watched. I think a lot of that had to do with the sound. Like, you felt like the environment was so beautifully depicted. Obviously, Ryan Coogler's eye, but the music, I think, just took it to a crazy new level, and you really felt it. Speaking of cultural appropriation, though, I wanted to know your take because I watched it yesterday, so I haven't actually spoken to anyone about the film yet. I haven't even like thought through my own thoughts, but I wanted to know what you thought about Haley Steinfeld's character in relation to this idea of cultural appropriation, because obviously she's, you know, part of the family in the beginning, but things change, as we know. So I wonder what your reading of that was, essentially.
I think that Haley Steinfeld's character, it was also mentioned in the film that her grandfather is like, I think a quarter black. So she has a little bit of blackness in her. And it's also brought up in the film that her mother was very close to Smoke and Stack and was kind of like a grandmother to them, or like a second mother to them. In my opinion, Haley's character feels like basically like the poor white people that did exist in the 30s and in later times in America that were very close to the black people just because of their economic displacement and the fact that they are basically like living in the same neighborhoods. They shop at the same grocery stores. Many sharecroppers became close with poor white farmers during that time. And there's another film that I watched years ago called Mudbound, directed by Dee Rees, where there is a black family that, you know, becomes close with a white family that moves near them because this white family has hit on very hard times due to the Great Depression. And this black family essentially, like, they start helping this white family because they say no? Yes. But because of like the generational trauma and because they're white and like this family's black, they kind of have to say yes. So like the mom starts braiding the young girl's hair, the mom starts cooking the meals, starts cleaning, and the dad feels uncomfortable by this, of course, but like they can't say no to them because despite the fact that they're white and they're poor like the black family is, these white people, if they get upset, they can just call the Klan. And it's clear that Haley Steinfeld's character looks at Smoke and Stack as her brother. She does not see color, and that's the problem. Because when she goes up to, let me look at my notes real quick. When she goes up to Stack at the train station, he is straight up just like looking every which way because there's a white woman approaching him. And Haley doesn't care the fact that she's white. She cares about the fact that Stack left, didn't say goodbye, didn't go to her mother's funeral. And it's possible that Haley Steinfeld's character does not connect it in her head that, like, a black man cannot go to a white funeral, girl, because some of those people are in the Klan. And despite the fact that Haley Steinfeld's character probably thinks, like, oh, the Klan's gone, like, the black people know the Klan is not gone. They are just saying that. They're lying. And she doesn't understand the separation between them. So when she turns and she goes back in, it does kind of speak to how comfortable white people can feel in black spaces to the point where like they don't see race and they don't acknowledge race, but that can be to black people's detriment because we have to acknowledge our race for our protection because we understand that the way we move in the world is not the way that you can move. And white people look at it as paranoia. They look at it as black people, you know, being crazy or like black people, you know, playing it too safe when like you have to play it safe because we can't move through the world in the same way that you can. And unfortunately, you know, she got turned and then she immediately turned Stack. Like, and then he was, you know, And then Smoke was holding his dead brother in his arms. And I think that it was definitely like tough to watch. And I love that Haley Steinfeld was cast for the part because she is a beloved actress. She's a well-known actress. I'm a huge Haley Steinfeld fan. Like,
Same.
I love her. And I feel like her casting in this movie is obviously deliberate to be like, you know, despite the fact that you may like her and that you're okay with her, and like even Wumney's character was like, oh no, she's family. Despite all that, she is a white woman. You know, she does not exist in the culture in the way that we do. Yeah. And I wanted to ask your opinion real quick. What did you think of the native writers when they went to the people's house in the middle of nowhere and they're like, so we're looking for this vampire, or they're looking for, you know, this individual we're chasing. And then the lady was like, oh, no, it's passed through here. And then the other guy's like, so the sun's going down. And he's like, you know what? May God have mercy on your soul. I was curious. I wanted to get your thoughts on that. Like, what did you think about that moment?
That's really interesting. I hadn't thought of that since it happened, but I think it's speaking to, you know, the prejudice that exists with these two random white people that are living in the middle of nowhere, basically, who have trusted a stranger to come into their house. Obviously, they were hesitant at first, as you would be with any stranger, but they've trusted him seemingly on the basis that he's white. In the end, the implication is maybe not necessarily that he's white, but maybe that he appears more favorable to them than these people that come and they say, has a man come here, he's not what he seems. Because if I've let somebody into my house, literally doesn't matter what race they are, and then 10, 20 minutes later, somebody comes by and says, the person you've just let into your house is not who they seem, I'm leaving the house.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm leaving the house. He's leaving the house. Somebody's leaving the house. Everybody's leaving the house because clearly something is going on. But yes, they ultimately have that trust in him that they didn't have in what are they called, when they came and basically told them that the guy is not who he seems. And I think there's a very similar thread running through to when Haley Steinfeld's character presumes that, you know, these people are harmless. When she goes to Stack and she says, what if, you know, they want to spend money? What if they're just people looking to have a good night and they spend their money and you guys make money? And like you said, there is almost this disregard for safety, for the safety of Black people that comes from Haley unintentionally. I forgot her character's name in the film. I don't want to keep saying Haley. It's not Haley. Unintentionally, she's putting these people at danger just by being near them. By the way, literally just by being in their proximity. Because had she not been at the Duke joint, those vampires would have been sent off and they would have spent the rest of the night outside. Because nobody in that place, not a single Black person, was going to let those people in that place. None of them. Because already they were like, what's going on? This is not safe. The same thing happens when Smoke and Shack buy their property. When they buy the property and they're buying it from a white man, immediately they sense the red flag. They're like, if you and your boys come back here, we're shooting you on sight, right? Again, that appears paranoid to somebody who's like, this guy is selling you his property, why would he come back? But they knew he would come back. And he would come back armed and with loads and loads of people. And so it's this thing of, they know what it is to exist in a Black body. They know the circumstances that surround them as Black men. And I think Haley's character poses a consistent threat to that. Even though she is family, even though she's close to them, from her implication that they should have come to the funeral, from her like walking up to Stack and, you know, saying what she said, from everything that she was doing, it was very clear to me, at least it appeared to me, that there isn't really any safety. No, let me put it this way. White people can never understand. No matter how close to you they are, no matter how close to your community they are, they're not going to understand it. And that's dangerous, ultimately, because her not understanding the situation led her to go and talk to these vampires and then come in and start killing people,
Mm-hmm.
which is insane. And I wanted to ask you now, and I don't know if maybe I'm going off track.
No, go ahead.
With Haley's character, whose name we're going to remember,
It's
I don't.
Mary.
Mary,
Yeah.
that's it. With Mary and Annie, I remember Womney's character. I found it interesting that Smoke was in a relationship with this very traditionally Black Southern woman,
Mm-hmm.
and Tak was in a relationship with this, I guess, was in a very untraditional relationship with seemingly a white woman. And their fates were very different because of these relationships. So with Smoke, Annie offers him the kind of charm that he has around his neck, which protects him.
Mm-hmm.
And he has to physically take it off when he's like, I'm ready to die, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And with Stack, Mary doesn't seem to offer him much protection. She actually seems to be the person sending him into danger.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. If you think there is something there in terms of just looking at how these relationships, especially, if we are looking at the 30s, obviously interracial relationships, dangerous,
Mm-hmm.
but just how Smoke and Stack's relationships completely changed their future. And Smoke could have potentially survived so much more if he kept the little charm that he had around his neck.
Yeah, I think for the relationships that they have with Smoke being with Annie and Stack being with Mary, Stack, it makes sense that he's with Mary because he is very smooth and he's very charming, and he knows the danger behind being with a white woman. So it's likely that their relationship was not something that people knew about, because if it was, he would have not have made it to Chicago, obviously. And I think that the reason that Stack's fate is different from Smoke's is because Stack is always looking for an escape. Stack relies on the fact that his security is in his brother. Like his brother loved him and he didn't kill him. And in a way, Stack probably knew that his brother was going to kill him. And although like he knows that he should be messing around with a white woman, he knows that he can just leave town and that he won't have to face any consequences. He's someone that is slippery and can kind of get away with things. And it's the same way with, Mary, who is someone that, of course, probably grew up poor and probably didn't grow up around other white people, but she has to be aware to a certain point that her being a white woman means that she's not being treated in the same way that like Annie is being treated, or in the same way that like Jay Mawson's character is being treated. The character's name escapes me at the moment, but I feel like they both fit for one another because they know how to like sneak away. Like the fact that Smoke and Mary survived was a huge surprise at the end of the film. Did not expect that, but it also speaks to the point of how like they don't want to die, they don't want to escape. And Mary, it also, I remember when the Asian woman was like, oh, come on in, with the monsters, Mary was really quick to take somebody down and suck on their blood. You notice that she was not hesitant at all. So it also speaks to the fact that like, yeah, she is fine with being, part of the family and being their neighbor, but she was very quick to take Stack down with her, when she died, versus Annie, who understands what it is to be a vampire, who understands the implication that has on her soul as someone who, practices voodoo. I think it was voodoo she was practicing. So when she was turned, before that, she told Smoke, like, if I'm bit, I need you to kill me, because I'm not going to be stuck on this plane living that kind of existence. Because Mary, she knows that she's part of the family, but she also knows that she's a white woman. So she's fine with living forever because her life isn't that difficult as a white woman. And Annie, understands, that was Mary. Yeah, Annie. Their names are so similar. I'm trying to make sure that I'm saying the right names. Annie, understanding what vampires truly are makes it clear that, like, she's fine with dying. She's fine with passing on because she does not see the life that she lives right now as the final life or as the only life that she's meant to live. I think that's the real difference between these two couples, is that one of them, they're a bit selfish and they want to live an easy life, but a life that is fulfilling and rewarding to them. While Smoke, although he is chasing the bag, he wants ambition, he understands that this life, when it's over, he's fine with that. Like, he's resolute in that. Like, he killed his dad, something that could have easily got him thrown in jail. But that does not matter because he was doing it to protect his brother. And if he has to face the consequences for that, that's not something that, is going to, I guess not, it's not something that he fears. It's not something that he's really worried about, ending up in jail. Like, of course he skipped town to go to Chicago, but still, he's someone that is he has convictions, and he stands by his convictions. And I think that's why Smoke and Annie work together, because to put it plainly, they're both very mature and they're both adults, like Smoke, if he wanted to keep living, he could have kept living. If he wanted to keep making money and try to make the juke joint work, of course he could have done that. But his brother is a vampire, and he presumed that he was dead. The love of his life is dead. He lost his baby, years ago. He doesn't really have that much, and most of his friends burned to ash when the sun came up. And since there's nothing else that ties him to this plane, like his community, like his goal and his dream of opening a juke joint with his brother, then there's nothing left for him here. And he is fine with taking out all these KKK members and then dying so he can finally be with the love of his life and his daughter that he left all those years ago. Yeah. I really think it's about their convictions at the end of the day.
Yeah. I think it's very interesting what identity means to them as well, because in the post credits scene, obviously we find out that Stack and Mary are still alive, and they're now kind of mimicking this very early 90s fashion. She's wearing like the big gold hoops, and she's dressed for the 90s. And it was very interesting to me to think of it in terms of identity, because these are not the people anymore, right? Stack and Mary don't exist anymore. These are just like the vampire souls kind of taking these vessels and walking through the world with them. And so I think it's very interesting that they lean into what they believe Stack would have been like to have the gold Stack ring when you're not Stack anymore, right? So it's, I guess, to kind of speak to this idea of cultural appropriation, it felt like really hitting the final nail on the head, that these souls are not Stack and Mary anymore. These are just like puppetry mimicking what the real people were actually like. But they're still mimicking them, 60 years later or something like that. Years and years and years later, they're still acting at being Black. Quite plainly. They're still acting at being the people that have long since been gone.
And I did want to say, when I saw the final credit scene, I was like sitting in the theater thinking about it. I was really thinking about what Annie said about how, like, their bodies are basically trapped in this world. And I did think about legacy as well, because in order to leave a legacy, you have to die. Like, you can't be here anymore. A legacy is what you leave behind. And you define what your legacy is. That means the life you live, who you are, who you interact with, how you treat people, what you created on this earth. That influences the legacy that you have and you leave for people. So with Stack now being immortal, he has no legacy. He doesn't really have any, like, strong purpose, or there's no reason for him to leave something that's going to leave a mark on this world. So he can purely live for himself, and he chooses to do that by choosing the woman that he was sneaking around with. He now has this forbidden love that he can be with for all eternity. But with being with this forbidden love, he loses sight of other things that matters. He lost sight of the fact that like his brother, has died, that his brother's, love has died, that his community is gone and is passed on. And most of the people he's probably known all his life are gone forever. But those things don't matter to him, and they don't really like have a hold on him, in his heart or in his soul, because that's not really him anymore, because you are who you are, defined by the experiences you have in life. When you live on forever, your experiences, they fade away, they become nothing, and you don't hold, that doesn't hold as much stock to you as it would when you fear death, when you fear your mortality, when you know that all of this is temporary. So you have to cherish the people around you. You don't really have to cherish anything if you understand that things will pass away and things will fade away, and you'll still be here. So you find no reason to, care about what's going on with you. So the thing he cares about is Mary. And so that's the only thing that he holds dear.
And I think it's so sad, because in that post-credit scene, he essentially says that Smoke asked him to leave Sammy alone. He was like, just as long as you leave Sammy alone, fine, I'll let you live. He hasn't left Sammy alone. I'm like, this was your brother's final wish to you. Just leave Sammy alone. Why have you visited him? At the end, I think it speaks to just how selfish he is. He doesn't care. He's like, yeah, I'm going to go and say hi. And as much as I want to believe that he just wanted to see Sammy one last time, I don't believe that's true. I think it is, this almost fear tactic to go and be like, by the way, I'm still alive.
Yeah.
Which doesn't make any sense.
Because he didn't need to do that. And also he bought his records throughout the years. And I feel like that also speaks to like the vampires, because they wanted Sammy's musical gift because they saw just like how powerful his music was. And Stack understood that as well. And he was buying his records, he was buying his music, even the music that he didn't like. He was still, buying his music. That's probably not even the first show of Sammy's that he's been to. He's probably been to every one of his shows. So not only have you not left him alone, but you've been stalking him and like keeping an eye on him all these years. And to not even like kill Sammy or not hurt him or harm him, it doesn't mean that you haven't left him alone, because it's like you're playing the long game. You're almost like playing with your food, so to speak. And you're doing it in a way where it is very sneaky. And even if Sammy doesn't understand that he is, being watched and being hunted, it's the fact that Stack knows that he is hunting Sammy, and that's what makes it so gross and like conniving.
Yeah, and it really just shows that he's not himself anymore. Because if this was your brother's final statement to you, that you should leave him alone, you would leave him alone. The real Stack would have left Sammy alone, I think. I like to think.
Yeah, I do agree with you on that. And as much as I love Sinners, I do want to like move forward to the next film that we're going to be talking about today. So, Sinners, phenomenal movie overall. I think it was really amazing. And just one last thing just to say, I want to get your opinion on like Sammy's decision to like leave home, just holding on to the guitar. Do you think that he was right to leave, or do you think he should have stayed?
It's very difficult, because when Smoke and Stack return, they make it very clear that where they went, they didn't get anything there that they were missing from home. So, and the implication is actually that was it Chicago, I think they went to? That when they were in Chicago, they actually found that it was worse than where they were from. It was a new devil, essentially. And I think there's a scene where it says, it's better the devil you know than the one that you don't know. And I'm conflicted about whether Sammy made the right decision, because I think he made the right decision in following his dream and not allowing his father to kind of tie him down and force him to do things the way that they did them in his hometown. And so I think the dream element of it, yes, but I think there is this sort of sadness that comes with the fact that he had to detach himself from his community. And so when we see him in that post-credit scene, as much as he is this huge star, he's not there with anyone. There is like I want to kind of presume that he doesn't actually have the same community that he had when he was back home. I don't know how he would have built that community up. Everybody burned down, essentially. And I don't know how he would have met new people to fill in those gaps. And so, yes, I believe he made the right decision in chasing his dream and in making music, right? And his music was so powerful and it was so beautiful. But I think there is still this feeling of having made the wrong step simply because he is implied to be dying at the end, or at least close to death, and he's by himself. He doesn't seem to have a community. And what made music so powerful on that one day was that it was being shared by community. There were other people there that were feeling it exactly the same way he was feeling it. And when he sang, it was like a light went off in everybody and they were like, whoa. And now he's performing to crowds that I would presume are not from where he's from, that they don't quite understand what he's singing about or where he's performing from, what's in his heart as he's performing this. So I'm still thinking about it. I'm a bit conflicted. I think, yes, he made the right decision, but I think that right decision came with so much sadness that I don't know if it was the right decision.
Yeah, I I agree with you on that, and I think that seeing Sammy alone in the bar was very striking, just because like
Mm-hmm,
it's clear that he's lived like an incredible life, and
mm-hmm,
it's clear that he has gained so much success. But I think that um, I I feel like at the end of the film we are led to believe that Sammy is essentially alone. You know,
yeah,
because of his age, you can assume that he's been married, that he has grandchildren, you know, and that he has a family. But
mm-hmm,
at this point in time in his life, he's by himself, you know,
mm-hmm,
and it's possible that he has been alone for a long time. And I feel like throughout the film, as we're watching it, it was very clear from the beginning how badly Sammy does not want to be there. Like, he does not
yeah,
want to live there anymore. He is tired of being under his father's thumb. He wants to make music. And
mm-hmm,
even though he found out that the guitar he was given is not like a guitar from a famous musician, but it was like their dad's guitar, you know, Smoke and Stack's father's guitar. Even so, even though the his most prized possession, it was essentially a lie, it was still his possession. It was his own. And it was the one thing that made him feel like whole. It made him feel like himself. And his
mm-hmm,
identity is so tied to his music that
mm-hmm,
he wanted to follow that rather than following in the footsteps of his father. Because if he follows in the footsteps of his father, he's stuck in his shadow and he'll never
yeah,
be able to be his own person. He'll always be, you know, stuck behind somebody or underneath someone. So when he makes a choice to leave, I can understand why he would want
yeah,
to leave because you know, if it was any other person, when you realize that the first night you give yourself and fully sing your heart out, that it's
mm-hmm.
so powerful that it brings vampires to your door and kills people, like any other person would have simply just decided to lay low, be
Mm-hmm.
quiet, and continue to be a sharecropper. And I think that Sammy realized that, like, the life that he's living there, you know, picking cotton, working under his father, the clan any day could knock down at your door, and now there are vampires in your community. I feel like he realized that he needed to make a break for it, you know. And
Mm-hmm.
even though Smoke and Stack, they warned him against going there, they warned him against, you know, taking that risk. He realized that it's better that I take that risk and I possibly die than die here and have not done anything with my life.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand that, and I feel like Sinners, such a phenomenal movie. I feel like It's the one movie that's coming out this year. I don't know if I said this already on the mic, or maybe I said this off the mic, but every other movie that's going to come out this year, I'm just going to automatically compare it to Sinners. Unfortunately. Unfortunately, because it's honestly raised the bar. And there are I feel like there are very few movies that come out every year where everyone watches it and it is like a unanimous, agreement that this is the movie of the year.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. And one more thing on Sinners, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of Sammy, that line, because I cried at the end of Sinners, by the way. I didn't expect to, because obviously it was like a horror movie, and I was like, this is a great film. And it finished, and it was the first post-credit scene where he says to Stack, that was like the best day of my life, essentially. He says, before the sun went down, that was the best day of my life. And I just sobbed. I was like, oh. And I don't know why it hit me so much when I was in the cinema, but I think looking back, the reason that it really struck me is it was so sad to me that he couldn't have it both ways. The reason that I think that was the best day of his life is because he simultaneously got to explore his gift of music. He got to sing in front of people, but he also got to do it with people who understood, who were part of the thing that he was singing of. And I think music is obviously very important to Black people in general, but in the film, specifically Black Americans, and their experience of liberation and their experience of freedom and their experience of race relations, right? And so him singing in that bar in front of people that are from where he's from and understand exactly where he's speaking from and why he's speaking this way, and having the ability to explore his talent. I think the reason it was the best day of his life was because he had it both ways. He had his community and he was able to express himself in the way that he pleases. Mm-hmm. And, we jump decades later and it is still the best day of his life. And it made me so sad that, he couldn't have it both ways. He couldn't explore his talent and be back home. He had to leave and he had to do it somewhere else. And it absolutely broke my heart. I cried. I was like...
Yeah, I think I didn't catch that. Like he said, that was the best day of my life. Where it's like, you've lived a long life now. You've lived a long life. That can't be the best day of your life. Out of all the things you've gone through. It's quite shocking, but also like, once again, I had to say the music in the movie was sensational. I love that Ryan Coogler, he said every single part of this movie will be fine-tuned. Okay. Every part of this movie will be excellent. And it was. And I know whichever Marvel executive said he shouldn't have directed Blade, they are ripping their hair out. They're beating the air. They're beating their chest in anger. I know they are. And you better be. But we're going to move from Sinners to the next point in the podcast, talking about Severance. Work, memory, and the manufactured self. And I really did want to talk about Severance because I think that when the show first came out, many people didn't know what the show was about. And many people hadn't really watched the show yet. So by the time season 2 came, everybody like caught up on season 1 and then watched season 2. So we're not really going to give a full review over Severance. I do want to talk about like the innie and outie dynamic about Severance because people have a lot of thoughts. They have a lot of like theories and questions, like what are they doing on Severance floor? Like what is their job there at Lumen? And for like my opinion in Severance, when I was doing my research, it's clear that the innie and outie, they're something of like manufactured doppelgangers. And, they're created by the medical procedure that splits a person's consciousness and memories based on their location, work versus the outside world. And these two halves are literally severed from each other, with the innie existing solely in the workplace without any memory of their outside life. And then this work-life split that is literal creates a second self, a work double for Lumen. And then the outie is the one who's on the outside and is experiencing, personal pain, trauma. And it is the most extreme form of compartmentalization ever. And as someone who's worked in the corporate life and who has had a 9 to 5 many years of my life, I have to say this is like, it's such a sci-fi look into like, you know, work-life balance
Mm-hmm.
and, you know, the culture of being a laborer, the culture of being a 9 to 5er. And I
Mm-hmm.
found the show to be incredible, honestly, very well done. And I feel like the innie outie dynamic in the show, it's it's actually, I feel like it's so revolutionary and so amazing that it feels obvious. You
Mm-hmm.
know, there are times where I'm watching something and someone brings up an idea or a concept in, you know, the media I'm consuming, and I'm like, that is actually so amazing and yet so relatable. And it's crazy that this is the first time it's been introduced to me. You
Mm.
know, did you feel that way when you were watching Severance?
I did. So I was one of the people that watched Severance when it first came out, which was like 3 years ago, right? It was like 2022.
Yeah.
And I remember it quite vividly. I put it on literally just on Apple TV and I was like, oh, okay. And my brother, I was watching it with my brother and he was like, oh, this is so boring. Like, first episode. We finished the entire season in one night and we were like, that's the best piece of television we've ever seen in our life.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. It's such an obvious thing that I'm like, how did nobody present this to us? And I think it's done in a way that's so subtle and it isn't super in your face and like, trying to bask in this idea that, we thought of this really revolutionary thing.
Mm-hmm.
But even in the way that it's styled, it feels so simple, but there's so much to digest there. And I think it's genuinely one of the best shows that I think has ever existed. It's so well done and it's so well written and it's so revolutionary that it's like, why did nobody think of this before?
Yeah. And I do think that with Lumen as like the corporation, the fact that they
Yes.
utilize like the double to
Mm-hmm.
create the perfect worker, so to speak, like someone who is not marred by their own personal pain and not checking their phone, you know, calling up family members, like their only focus is their job. Their only
Mm-hmm.
focus is their work. And so it's easy to entice them with like, you know, little gifts at work, small incentives to have them working hard, to have them focus on what they're supposed to be doing, and to keep all the floors and all the different departments separate from each other so that people only congregate with the people that they work with. That way, they are less likely to socialize or less likely to want to fraternize with, you know, other departments. And
Mm-hmm.
also having people focus on their work and not even like remember outside conversations means that they can't talk to people about how much they get made. They can't talk to
Mm-hmm.
people about what they do at work or how their boss treats them. They don't have any ideas of asking for any accommodations at work. They're just simply happy and they feel even lucky enough to be
Mm-hmm.
able to go to work. And the person who is on the outside, you know, they are seeking out this procedure obviously because the life they live on the outside is not one that they want to remember. They're
Mm-hmm.
looking for that separation. They're looking for, you know, that kind of space in their memory. That is something that they're seeking on purpose. And seeing how Lubin kind of like weaponizes the procedure for certain people, it's very interesting. And you know, there are a lot of theories online as to like how certain people started working at Lumen, which I kind of take with like a grain of salt because I feel like Ben Stiller has done such a phenomenal job in making the show, and I think that there's like so much more that's going to be revealed to us as we
Mm-hmm.
continue on with, you know, the season and everything like that. So I did want to ask you, what is your opinion on the innies? Like, do you feel like they're monsters or do you feel like they're victims? Because a lot of people on Reddit or online, they have so many discussions about if the innies are, you know, good or bad.
That's very interesting. I haven't actually read anything about them being bad. Can I ask why people think they're bad before I make up my mind?
Yeah. So I think that with the innies, I'm not sure if people really see them as monsters, so to speak, but I think that people view the innies as not even human. I think
Mm-hmm.
that people look at the innies like they're copies, you
Mm-hmm.
know, in the same theory, following in the theory of like the doppelganger, where it's like the manufactured self, it's like the, curated version of yourself. People
Mm-hmm.
look at innies like it is simply a persona, like
Mm-hmm.
it's just an act. Like when people are watching the show, they see innie Mark as a separation from outie Mark. Like outie Mark is Mark. That's
Mm-hmm.
real Mark. And innie
Okay.
Mark is just like, he's an imposter, so to speak. He's just a placeholder. So I think a lot of people, when they were looking at like Helly and Mark's connection with one another, they're just looking at it as like, oh, it's just like a band aid, but it's not something that's real. Like people
Mm-hmm.
didn't look at it with something that was like actually worth pursuing because they only know each other when they're at work. And
Mm-hmm.
the person that Mark is at work isn't an actual person. That's just like a copy of himself. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean?
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see them as being less than human or being copies of the real person. I think they are also the real person. I think what I find really interesting about Severance, speaking to how like very obvious it is it takes something that I believe we are already doing and makes it into this very sci-fi concept. And so that argument to me sounds like saying, are you yourself when you go to work and you're code switching? I'm thinking of that Lakeith Stanfield film where he I'm sorry to bother you,
Oh,
where he
sorry to
like
bother
puts
you.
on, yeah,
Yes.
where he like puts on a different voice every time he's at work, right? I think with Severance, it takes, the idea of code switching or changing your persona for work, and it makes it into this much bigger sci-fi thing. But those are the same person. I actually think the model that Lumen has maybe dehumanizes the innies so much that maybe viewers are starting to dehumanize the innies as well. Because it is dehumanizing to say, you can't speak to other people from other departments. You can't do anything. Your only purpose here is to work. But I think what's probably more sinister about it is they're not using robots. They're using real humans and
Mm-hmm.
just stripping away their humanity
Mm-hmm.
so that they can do the work. And that's something that has really been plaguing me because I think of it in terms of capitalism, for example. And if we think of like AI and the growth of I sincerely believe that capitalism loves the human slave. Let's
Mm-hmm.
put it that way. The human slave that is stripped of their humanity through labor, as opposed to the artificial slave. And so with any mark, with any of the innies, except for Helly, with any of the innies, I do believe that they are the victim in this situation. I understand that people can look at them and think, well, this isn't the real thing, but I think it is the real thing. I think they are being victimized to what I perceive as slavery. It is essentially slavery because they have no understanding of why they're there. They had seemingly no choice in being there, although I suppose they do have a choice because their other counterpart chose for them to be here. But anyway, I see them as the victim. I see them as only the victim. I see them as being constantly dehumanized within this space. And I think at the end of season one, where they staged that escape, it seemed to me to kind of represent that they were being victimized in this space and that they did want more from life. Seemingly, if we think of the idea of the innie and the outie, it seems like the outie would have the better life, which is not necessarily the case in Severance, obviously. But in both instances, the innie is the one that is, it seems, more unaware of the situation. So the bigger victim.
Yeah, I think that the innies are living like half lives, so to
Yeah.
speak. And it's clear in season two how Lumen is trying to remedy the whole like escape in season one with trying to make the innies feel more whole. But that is very difficult to do if the entire workplace structure you've built around the innies is essentially the fact that they're a new form of consciousness. And the only
Hmm.
reason why they are created is to be exploited.
Yeah.
So to try and like draw back on the exploitation is hard. And I think that's what that's what's so funny to me with like, um, gosh, what's his name? I was going to say Mushnik, but that's from
Oh, Milchick.
Milchick. Okay, it's Milchick,
Or
right?
Milchick. Milchick. I
Milchick.
don't know.
Yeah. So Mr. Milchick, I think that's why he does like the dance party for
Yeah.
Helly when she first comes, or like why he brings in the marching band when Mark finally finishes Cold Harbor. It's like this is the most insane, ridiculous thing, but like they exist in such a cold environment that is so stripped from any kind of humanity that when they complete something at work, you need to fill them with such life and allow them to feel any kind of joy so that they never complain, but they are always working and striving for the next thing. That's why, you know, Dylan's waffle party was so weird and strangely sexual because it's like, hey, let's feed this weird part of his brain. That way he can like see if that gets like a little spark in his mind. Like if that scratches an itch, you know, if that's something he's into, you know, like it's kind of like, why would anybody like this? But then again, I think that the waffle party was like created by one of the Lumen creators, and like rich people are kind of weird. They're into strange things. So when the women were coming out with the masks, I was like, ooh, this is a little strange. I would have left that waffle party too, if I'm being honest. I'm not watching that. I'm actually going back to work. I'm good, guys. You can keep that. I don't want that anymore. But I think that with the innies, I at some points was like I did feel bad for them at certain points because they really are just, you know, existing as, you know, like you said, human slaves. And I feel like, in my opinion, I don't know if there are maybe experts that disagree with me. I think this is why AI can never really replace humankind, because even though people like things that are fast and easy and, you know, AI is something that's very quick, AI makes mistakes all the time. Like any kind of AI model that you create, whether it's ChatGPT, whether it's Grok, whether it's Bing AI, it doesn't matter. It's not without mistakes because AI is created by humans and humans make mistakes. And in the way that these models are created and the energy that it's used, it is ridiculous to think that AI will outlast humans because just off the energy sources alone that ChatGPT uses with all the water it uses, like very unlikely that it'll continue going. And with AI being used in like art, like I just saw an article the other day that apparently Natasha Lyonne will be creating an AI film, or she will be directing an AI film. Yeah. So I feel bad for how many times I watched Russian Doll because that is disappointing to hear. But, you know, humans don't always want something made by robots. Like, are there humans that, you know, follow AI meme pages and watch AI videos and listen to AI podcasts?
AI meme pages?
Huh?
There are AI meme pages?
Yeah.
That's a thing?
There are AI podcasts too.
Oh my god.
Yes. The other day, somebody offered me like a whole deal to have an AI co-host on my podcast. Yes.
No.
I would be talking to an AI robot. And they were like, "Oh, this is a paid deal." And I was like, "You could keep your money. That's not happening. You could keep that money because I will get pissed off immediately. I need a person to talk to." But the thing with AI is that like it's not a human person. Human beings have lived experiences and memories. People want to experience human connection. You cannot replace everything with robots because they're cold and they are unfeeling, and people want, you know, some kind of community with other humans. Like, even though people don't get along sometimes, that doesn't mean that they want to do away with humans. And corporations are of the mindset that they want their work done quickly, they want their work done well, and they want it done by the most, like the biggest number of people that they can, so that things can be done as fast as they can. But what they fail to realize is that eventually, like, these models will fail because of the way they're created. And that is perfectly represented in Severance, because these innies are meant to be the perfect little laborers, the perfect little workers that do as they're told. But even the people that are like babysitting the innie, so to speak. Like, Patricia Arlett's character, like, her job wasn't safe. They were so quick to give her the boot. And then Milchick was put in her place, and he was immediately scrutinized because these corporations, they expect perfection. And they'll do whatever it is they can to achieve that perfection. And they believe that separating humans from the nasty and messy bits of their selves would have made them the perfect workers. And that wasn't enough because you're still dealing with human beings.
Yeah.
I mean, that's immediately where they failed. And also, you're not going to get that with a robot either, because robots will break down, they'll make mistakes, they'll make errors. Like,
and they'll be so much more expensive. Like the labor is not going to be cheap if you're making these like high-tech robots that do this work for you 24 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, you're dealing with humans. I really want to get into Mickey 17 because I've now got into the idea of like humans and labor. But
I did want to ask you real quick, because I think with the more like sci-fi kind of like ideas and concepts that are coming out in media with like The Substance and then Severance, people are now like parroting these ideas as if they can like actually happen in real life, which like possibly they can, maybe. So I was curious to see, like, would you ever go under the severance procedure?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. I would be so scared that I'm like making drones for the US government or something. Like, I would be worried, you know?
It would be, I would be so scared.
Yeah.
I would be so scared. And also, I don't endeavor to be the perfect capitalist subject. So I think this would make me the perfect worker, the perfect laborer ever. And I don't want to contribute to that. I think that's so scary. But no, I was going to say maybe it's an adventure, but no.
It's not an adventure. Because the only people who want to do that are people who are like scared of their own lives, or they're not happy, or they're not like settled in the lives that they live. And like, I'm sorry if you would seriously consider getting the severance procedure, but I hope that you reconsider, because that is not a joke. They go into your brain.
It's not worth it.
No, it's not worth it. And when Mark was going through the process of being unsevered, like the process he was going through, I was like, it's not even worth doing it in the first place. If that's how I gain freedom, like, no, I'm actually good. I'm okay. I don't want that. Yes, but we can go into Mickey 17, cloning, expendability, disposable lives. And I, first of all, want to say I loved Mickey 17. I thought it was a great movie. I have seen a lot of negative reception that the film got. And I'm the kind of person where if I like a movie and I enjoyed it, all the negative reception, I say, don't care. You're wrong, because that's Bong Joon-ho. Like, y'all don't know who he is. You're not familiar with his work, so of course y'all think that it's bad. You don't know him like I do, so that's fine. They're just not familiar with his game.
Yeah, I mean, I liked it, but I also understand the criticism. I think that I think it was a little bit too what's the word? Maybe he was trying to be too accessible. I don't know. It felt a bit heavy-handed at times, like his commentary on capitalism, because of Parasite and how subtle Parasite was. And it, was an incredible film, but its commentary was so seamless and it worked. I felt like Mickey 17 did kind of just hammer the point home, like, guys, capitalism is bad. Which I can understand why people would critique, but I think it was a very entertaining film. And so I didn't mind that it was very heavy-handed in its commentary. I thought that worked because it was a good film, and I really enjoyed it. And I thought the cloning idea was done really, really well. And I thought that Robert Pattinson was also really good. I think what I'm noticing with these doppelganger and cloning stories is you need a really strong actor to carry it. You need a very strong actor. Yep. Otherwise it doesn't sell. It doesn't work. And I think Robert Pattinson, Michael B. Jordan, the both of them do such a great job of making it clear these are two different characters. Although I will say that Mickey 17 is guilty of doing the thing that I was speaking about at the beginning, where it kind of creates two characters that have absolutely nothing in common. as opposed to having the doppelgangers have some things in common and other things not. Because with Mickey, it's Mickey 18, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is quite like this very, he's like the violent one, right? He wants liberation.
Brash.
Yeah, he wants liberation, but through any means necessary, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And 17 is super meek and doesn't want to do anything ever and doesn't know how to stand up for himself. But I thought they worked very interestingly together as clones.
I do want to say, I do agree with you in that, because you can see that there are similarities between Smoke and Stack. There are also similarities between Mark's Audi and Mark's Innie, which I feel like it was hard for me to distinguish them at certain times, because I feel like Mark in Severance, I don't know how to say this, but like, he's a little pathetic. You know, he's a little sad. And as much as I love, no, what's his name? Adam Scott. I was supposed to say Ben Wyatt. Oh my gosh, that's not his actual name. As much as I love Adam Scott as an actor, seeing him play Mark is so interesting, because like at home, he's like, you know, he's very quiet. He kind of lets people walk all over him. Like, he's funny and sarcastic with his sister, but like, he has this like underlying thorough line of just being kind of like a hater. And that's because he hasn't moved on with his life. I mean, he lost his wife. I mean, that's very sad, but like, you know, he has kind of stopped any healing process within him. And his innie is like very naive almost. Yeah. And he gives like, you know, new guy on the job, but every single day on the job, in a way where he is completely unmarred by the fact that he has to come to work, because work is like the happiest place in his life. And I do feel like seeing how Mark, Innie, and Audi are very similar in the way where like they're kind of losers. I do think there is something to be said where it's possible that Innie Mark feels the pain that Audi Mark feels, which is why he enjoys work so much, because it's possible that he knows that work is something that he has to look forward to, or that there is something underneath the surface that is dark and troubling that he doesn't want to peek at. So work is the one thing that he can kind of like look towards, because it's the only thing that he knows. So he can just enjoy this fully, you know? And you're right, Mickey 17, Mickey 18, very different people. But I feel like Robert Pattinson, I always thought of him as a good actor. But watching him play Mickey 17, Mickey 18, I was like, oh damn, like this is actually like this is very good. Like this is actually incredible what I'm watching here.
Yeah, 100%. And I thought Naomi Aki was just the perfect partner for him. So good. She was incredible, and she just made it work. The two of them together, I think they had great chemistry, and they just they made each other look great, I think. Yeah. What did you think about the I suppose the fact that this kind of expendable program exists in the first place as a larger commentary on the world, I suppose?
I think that the expendable program makes sense to have like disposable bodies, you know, working these terrible jobs, because the things they had Mickey doing are, you know, by labor laws, you cannot have people doing these things, you know, like having him go outside to a foreign planet and breathe in the air and see if there is a horrible disease out there and build a vaccine off of his dead body. Like, that's not legal. That's not the thing you can do. But like, if you have a disposable body that you can reprint and remake over and over and over again, then that makes sense. And the way that the scientists and even like the leader that Mark Ruffalo was playing, and the other people on the ship, the way they treated Mickey, like he wasn't even a person, like he is expendable, because in a way he kind of is. And it was crazy to me watching the movie, because I was actually surprised that Mickey was the only expendable on the ship, because that made me start thinking like there's possibly other ships on there, maybe run by other senators or other thought leaders, world leaders, whatever it might be. Because Mickey being the only expendable, it doesn't really make sense to me, because capitalism, you know, it runs on human labor, but not only human labor, but human exploitation. So it would make sense why there needs to be like more expendables. And like
Yeah.
when I first saw the trailer for the movie, I kind of thought that everybody on the ship was an expendable. Like that was my thought process. So when I watched the film and I saw it was only Mickey, I guess like other people, they went on the ship and I guess they just went on. But I feel like Mickey isn't the only person on that ship running from somebody, the only other person on the ship needing money. Like he's not the only person on there who has hard times. So him being the only expendable, I feel like was maybe the one thing where I was like, But I think for the plot and just to move the movie along, it makes sense to make him the only expendable, because you can't have like 10 actors playing themselves over and over and over again, because then it gets redundant after a while.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder if that's just because nobody else wanted to do it. He obviously signs up to it and he doesn't read what it says.
Not at all.
And his friend also signs up to a job, but he ends up being like one of the pilots or something, right? Steven Yeun's character. And so, yeah, I do wonder if that's actually simply because nobody would sign up for this crazy program and he just kind of ends up doing it. Because you're right. I was also very surprised that he was the only expendable. I was like, so where's the team of expendables? Because surely that makes all of this faster and quicker to do. But maybe also there is the threat, and I suppose I'm thinking of Severance here, of the expendables potentially unionizing if something does go wrong, because there was always the threat that with the expendables, with the technology that kind of clones them, it is a threat to humanity, because if there's like 50 of the same person, that's scary. They can, who was it? There was that man that, commits a murder and he's somewhere else or something like that. And so I think, number one, I think he probably is the only one that chose to do this, he didn't know what he was doing. But also there is potentially the threat of having too many expendables. So they kind of have to have a very controlled guinea pig that they know they can keep an eye on, essentially.
I do think that he is a guinea pig, but I do remember the last scene. It wasn't the last scene, but it was towards the end of the film where Toni Collette's character is by the, I guess, human printing machine, and Mickey is there, and she is like speaking to him, but Mark Ruffalo is being printed out of the machine as they're talking. And I think it kind of brings up this theory in the film that even though we've been following Mickey as the human guinea pig, who, by our knowledge, is the only person being remade and repackaged, but because everyone wears the same, suit, everyone is seemingly kind of looks the same, like not many people are very like different from each other, and the ship is so big, there is a possibility that they have been reprinting other workers, but the other workers did not know. It is not to anyone else's knowledge, or it's something that is kind of like a theory that's kind of left. It's like a question that Bong Joon-ho, he poses to the audience to consider, but it doesn't really go past that. And I do think it's possible, considering that their trash chute has like a giant hole to a lava pit. Like, how likely is it that someone else fell in that? Like, very likely. So it's possible that like there is other people have been made into other doubles of themselves, because I think one of the commanders, one of the leaders in the film, he seemed very quiet and very like to himself at the beginning of the film, and certain characters seem to have different characteristics as the movie continues on. So it does kind of feed into that theory that like the people on the ship with Mickey 17, they're not the people they were when they first came on the ship. So it's like that people are being reprinted, but it's not something that's widely known, as people know that Mickey is the one
expendable
clone on there. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd really like that theory, and I think it's probably true, because can you imagine, they're not eating that much. They're like barely living on this ship, and they've been there for years. So even if it isn't that somebody was murdered or they fell into the lava pit, it could just be dying because they're humans and they're not getting enough of anything when they're on this ship. Like they have these tiny portions of food and everything is controlled. So I do think it's possible that, maybe somebody got sick or something and they would just reprint them because they would have to. They're up in outer space, they're far, far away from Earth. They need the workers, they need the numbers. So they probably are printing more people. I hadn't heard that theory, but I think it checks out. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And because of the people that are on the ship, they're like Mickey, they're in desperate need of money. They need to go away from the people on Earth. They want to start a new life, and most likely they're following around Mark Ruffalo's character. So it's likely because of how many people are on the ship. If someone dies, if someone gets hurt, something happens in space wherever they plan on colonizing, they're perfectly fine with just acting like this person is, missing in action or something else has happened. Because, mind you, there's the man that works for the gang leader or whoever it is, the loan shark that they owe money to. It's likely that Steven Yeun's character and Robert Pattinson's character are not the only people that owed that man money. So it's likely that guy had a list of people he had to go through before finally finding Steven Yeun near the end of that movie.
100%.
Yes. I did want to ask you a quick question. Do you personally feel like, because when I was doing research on doppelgangers and clones, it was kind of through the theory of it being a monster, and I don't feel like Mickey 17 is a monster, so to speak, but I do find it interesting the use of clones in the film and just through the theory of the doppelganger. I guess, what do you think about clones in the form of self and identity? Because Mickey changes, or is from Natasha, I think that's the character's name. Natasha? No, Nasha. I think that's her name. From Nasha's point of view, telling Mickey, every single one of his iterations have been different from the next. And he doesn't want to die because whenever he has died and been reprinted, it's been him. But Mickey 18 got reprinted while he was still on the planet. So if he dies, he's dying. So I wanted to get your take on what do you think about, the use of clones in forms of narrative, and how do you feel like that, I guess influences the idea of identity within a story?
I think compared to the other two film/TV show that we've talked about, what is interesting about Mickey 17, and I think why it probably poses a more interesting question about identity, is that every iteration of Mickey has been different. And because every iteration of, they've all been Mickey, right? But because every iteration of Mickey has been different, I think there is this very interesting conversation going on about how our identities are not fixed, and how this idea of the doppelganger as a monster that's coming from within, it's kind of squashed here. And the doppelganger isn't a monster at all, or the clone in Mickey 17 isn't a monster at all. He is what I would think is the braver side of Mickey. He, in many ways, is more favorable than Mickey when he shows up, because he's angry about what's happening to himself, to the other version of himself. Whereas I think when we meet Mickey, and Mickey 17, and when we spend time with him, we're okay, he's a sweet guy, but he's also a little bit too happy about the circumstances that are happening here. He's also a little bit too, okay with everything, right? And even when he's back on Earth, he's a little bit too pathetic. And his friend, Steven Yeun, I forget his name in the film, is a terrible friend. He's not his friend. He's a bad person. But again, he's very lenient with him. And so I think identity expression, how we express our identity, is so rigid in certain spaces, and we kind of become used to expressing ourselves in one way. And I think Mickey 17 falls into this path of being very timid and pathetic. And when we meet Mickey 18, we see the other side of him, and how that side actually balances him out so well, and brings up the question of, this person is not your friend. These people are treating you terribly. You don't have to pacify yourself. You don't have to pacify your identity to fit into the model of the perfect laborer. You can be angry about this. You can push back. You can fight back. But at the same time, I think there is a flaw in Mickey 18 in that he's too combative, and he wants to kind of break free of this trap, I suppose, to his detriment, to the point where he, it's not logical what he wants to do. They're in the middle of nowhere. What are they going to do realistically? But I think in terms of identity, it very interestingly looks at how we have so many different pieces of our identity that we maybe compartmentalize to fit whatever scenarios we're placed in. And I think specifically in relation to capitalism, we do have to compartmentalize the angry sides of ourselves, the sides that are a bit more combative, that aren't agreeable, in order to be good workers, in order to be good laborers. And that's what Mickey 17 is. Whereas 18 comes out ready to fight, right? Ready to be liberated. And I think it's really interesting seeing both of them side by side, especially, kind of towards the end of the film.
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree with you. And I feel like watching Mickey 17 after I finished watching Severance was such a fun little experiment in terms of like critical thinking, because watching Severance, a show where you completely separate yourself from like the nasty, messy parts of you, and you leave that at home, so to speak, and to work you come as like a blank slate, completely fragmented, but ready to work and focus on working only. And in Mickey 17, it focuses on the idea of how like you're replaceable, so to speak. Like, don't worry about this job you're working, because if you get fired, they'll replace you the next day. And it's taken in a literal sense of Mickey 17. Like, well, Mickey, if you die today, they'll just reprint you tomorrow. Even his friend says that to his face. And Mickey has kind of like gotten used to it, so to speak. Like, he talks about how lucky he is that he's like on this ship, and like how he's being fed 3 meals a day, and like even though he's being reprinted and he's going through these terrible things, I mean, at least I get to come back, and at least Nasha's always there waiting for me. Like, it's quite sad to see how complacent he has become, because he is being exploited, he is being taken advantage of. And even when Steven Yeun's character straight up is like, well, if you die, Mickey, then I get to live. At the end of the film, where they're kind of in lockup, and Steven Yeun reveals to him that, like, oh, that guy that we owed money to, yeah, he brought his henchman on the ship. He's looking for us. So I was wondering if I could send him your way. That way I can live a little bit longer. Maybe I can, like, hide from him. Even though you're on a ship, you're in the middle of space. How you finna hide from him? And he just becomes, he's like a placemat. He's a doormat, he just lets people walk all over him. And having the contrast of Mickey 18, someone who doesn't take anyone's, mess, who doesn't let people walk over him, who stands his ground and is firm in it, it's quite interesting to see how drastic of a change it is in personality. But it does speak to, like, what Nasha had said before, or told Mickey, essentially, that, like, all his different iterations were different and like different variations of himself, and how, yes, capitalism wants us to present as one singular way and show up to work as one way, ready to work, ready to perform, ready to do your job, and, do more, get paid less, and stay late, whatever it takes to get the job done and bring up the numbers and make the shareholders happy. And it's not for any kind of fulfillment within ourselves, but so that we may be fulfilled by helping, the company. Like, even when Mickey meets Mark Ruffalo's character and he's being rude and outright gross, Mickey does not even notice it, because he just feels lucky enough to just be alive and actually get to meet them. Like, he doesn't see Mark Ruffalo as this deceiver, as this manipulator, as this liar that he is playing in this movie, and clearly is. He sees him as, like, this guy who's given him this great chance and this amazing opportunity, which, yeah, he's giving you an opportunity, but it's not something to be, like, so happy about. It's like you are kind of living a second hell, so to speak. So it's not really something that you should be joyous over. Yeah.
Exactly.
Hmm.
He's too happy to be in the circumstance that he's in. And that dinner scene where he's literally throwing up from the food that they gave him. And he's just like, "Oh yeah, happy to be here." I'm like, "Mickey, stand up." Mickey.
That does not look like joy. No, no, sir. I don't believe you. I'm sorry. Yeah. I do have to say, in watching Mickey 17, it does remind me of Bong Joon-ho's previous film Okja with
Yeah.
Jake Gyllenhaal. And I think that movie also had Toni Collette in it.
Mm-hmm.
Did it have Toni Collette? No. It was, I think Tilda Swinton was actually in that movie. It wasn't Toni Collette.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was.
It was Tilda Swinton. And I think she was also playing a twin in that movie too, if I remember it right. But I enjoyed Okja because it's obviously a film talking about, like, animal rights and animal consumption and the effect that it has on the environment. And not only that, but like just watching the movie was so beautiful, and it was silly and it was goofy. And Jake Gyllenhaal, he will never turn down a role when he gets act just out of his ass. Like, it's just completely crazy and banal. But I feel like Okja did do a better job of covering the animal rights conversation, or kind of like the theme of animal rights in that film, because that's what the film is centered on. And when we bring up like the native species of the planet that they're trying to colonize, and those creatures that are on there, it's kind of brought up in the rear of the movie to basically like help Mickey understand that, like, you are not being valued and treated as a human being as you are. They're treating you like a product. They're treating you like you are disposable. So it really was there for him to kind of understand and him to get to that point in the film, which takes a while. And I'm not gonna lie, Mickey, like, there's not a light on in here. Like, the amount of times I was sitting in that theater and I was like, sir, please unplug and plug it back in. Like, come on, let's get up to speed, okay? This movie's gone on long enough, sir. Like, come on now. But I love Okja so much because of the conversation it has about, like, animals and their connection with humans, and how in Okja, when she has to like let go of her beloved, elephant pig. I'm not sure what that creature was.
I don't know what it is either.
No. And the whole journey there, she's trying to save her friend. She's trying to save her creature. And in her mind, it's just like a little photo shoot thing. Like, she doesn't know that, her friend is going to be turned into a sausage. And upon escaping, she takes a little baby with her, because the parents know, like, we can't both escape, but the little baby can go and live on and escape on their own. And we're gonna give the little baby the chance. And I really love seeing that, where it's essentially how, like, you live your whole life and you think you're going to have a full life, but then you turn out to be a commodity. You turn out to be a product. You turn out to be something that's going to be used, and, it's going to be taken advantage of by other people for their profit, in the way that, like, humans, our whole life, we have to work, we have to consume, we have to labor, and we can't even enjoy our lives because any kind of break we have is reduced to 2 days a week. And it's a difficult existence to live, and to see it, represented through our media, it's interesting. And to see it through a sci-fi concept where it's like, oh, it's so far in the future, like, this won't happen. And with how we see technology change and how quickly laws change throughout the world, it becomes more obvious, blatantly obvious, that, like, it's no longer so far in the future. It's something that feels like right around the corner, and not even right around the corner. It feels like something that could very clearly happen to any one of us. And consuming the media, it's enjoyable and I love it so much, but I could never, like, look at it and watch anything with 6 degrees of separation anymore, because it's like, yep, that's me on Monday. I gotta turn it to Mickey 17 and leave Mickey 18 at home. Like, it's not something where it's like, oh, I could just enjoy it and turn my brain off. It's like, yeah, that's me up there Once I get in the elevator, I'm just like, okay, time to log in. Yeah.
That's true. It feels too familiar. It feels like what we're living,
Mm-hmm.
essentially. That's how I felt about, I mean, this is a detour, but that's how I felt about the new season of Black Mirror. A lot of the stories, I was like, well, this is
Yeah.
literally happening right now.
And I feel like that's why I can't watch Black Mirror, because as much as I enjoy Charlie Booker and his work, and I feel like he's incredible, and shout out to Issa Rae for being on Black Mirror in the new season. I think that's really great, and I hope that she gets an Emmy nom for her role. Even though I have not watched it, I'm rooting for everybody black. I want her to get the Emmy nom regardless. I think that when you look around at what's going on, it's no longer innovative, it's no longer original. It really does feel like you're copying someone else's work, because you
Mm.
don't have to look too far or too wide to see a news story and it's like, oh, that happened today. It's like, yeah, girl. Yeah, girl, they're trying to put robots in movies now, you know.
That's bizarre.
It
An
is.
AI film, do you even like making films if you're making an AI film?
Do you like movies?
You like movies? No, but this is a real question. Do you
Yeah.
enjoy cinema?
Yeah.
As a filmmaker, do you like cinema?
Because I think that is the problem with cinema nowadays, is that because there are so many reboots and sequels, prequels, people are too focused on making things based off existing IP, that going towards AI film does not seem so, outlandish, because
Yeah.
original stories are no longer what studios are, banking on anymore. They're banking on things that are already profitable, that already have a built-in audience, and that can already bring them new work. Like, whenever they bring in a new actor, it is a nepo baby or an influencer.
Mm-hmm.
New talent, new art, maybe in one movie, one TV show, and then you just don't hear from them again. That's the
Mm-hmm.
thing that is really discouraging about the industry right now. So, Natasha Lyonne going towards AI film after she's been in Poker Face, Russian Doll, Orange is the New Black. Like, you see what you've done, and now you want to go and make a film off of a computer model that's probably going to steal work based off what you've previously done. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Amy Poehler needs to call her up and tell her to stop, please. Amy, put down the podcast mic. What are you doing? Someone's got to stop her.
That's so funny.
Yeah. Do you feel like you have any final thoughts about any of the works we've talked about, or just like, I guess, a doppelganger trend in general?
Mm, I think, you know what I think I want to see? I think I want to see doppelgangers in a non-sci-fi genre, which I think is a crazy thing to ask because
Mm-hmm.
obviously the concept itself is very like sci-fi-ish. But I really want to see it being, you know what? I think I have. I'm going to start talking about Past Lives. Past Lives is one of my favorite films, right? And and I think that's a film that's not about doppelgangers, but really explores the idea of identity through a lens that feels like Severance, that feels like doppelgangers. Because Nora, I don't know if you've watched it. Have you
Yeah.
watched it? Okay. Because Nora, when she kind of leaves Korea at a very young age, I think there is kind of a severance that happens there. Um, just due to the fact that she migrates to a completely different country in a completely different space.
Mm-hmm.
And when she grows up, it seems like her younger self continues to exist in Korea for Haesung at least.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's kind of envisioning the growth of that little girl while she's growing up in a completely different way. And then we kind of get this convergence where they meet again and it's just the connection is no longer there, at least for her, simply because she has grown out of herself
Mm-hmm.
and she has grown into a completely new person. And so I think I really like the exploration of identity through this lens of how we are constantly severing ourselves, not necessarily just because of capitalism, but because of things like migration, because of things like social media, like you mentioned at the beginning. And so I really want to see this idea explored, maybe in a film that isn't so rooted in sci-fi, but is more rooted in character analysis, or a romance like Past Lives, or even, I'm trying to think what other genre this could potentially work in. I think we saw it in horror with Jordan Peele. He did a really good job with that with Us. Lupita, I think she did great with that. But yeah, I really, maybe I want to see it in a romance. I want to see this idea of identity explored, or like just a simple drama as opposed to a sci-fi or a horror.
I do agree with you. I think that the doppelganger would be something interesting to explore in a different genre. And I have yet to watch Us still, but
Oh,
I probably should watch it just because of like what we're talking about today. And I may actually make the move to watch it. But
really good.
I
Yeah,
oh, did you like it?
I loved it. It was amazing.
Awesome. Okay, I'll just put it on my list. But I think for me, when it comes to doppelgangers or just like doubles in general, I feel like we're all kind of living double lives, so to speak, like living two different lives. And I don't say that as a bad thing. I feel like that's something that just kind of like naturally happens,
Hmm.
as people. You know, the way that I am at home is not the way that I am when I'm on the phone, when I'm doing my job. It's not the way that I
Hmm.
am when I'm with like my friends. I feel like we all present different sides of ourselves, and whether that is through the means of survival in the capitalist society that we live in, whether that's through finding some kind of virality and community and audience engagement in social media, however it may be, it's something that people have adapted, as a way of just continuing on and living your life. And
Hmm.
in terms of like Nora and past lives, I feel like I really related to that as someone who is Haitian American, because
Hmm.
I know how I am with my other Haitian friends, and
Hmm.
how I act with them is not how I act with like my white friends or my Black American friends, because
Hmm.
how we talk, how we act, and the culture that we have, kind of bleeds into like what we say to each other and how we act, rather than like
Hmm.
how I am with my white friends. Where like they know that I'm Haitian, but they don't see that I'm Haitian. They see that I'm Black, you know.
Yeah.
And with my Haitian friends, we all know we're Haitian, but we see, other Black people as like, oh, Black Americans and like Nigerians. We see people by their ethnicity, you know.
Hmm.
So I understand what it's like to have something of a fractured self.
Hmm.
And I don't feel like it's something that is, I don't want to say it's natural, but I feel like now it's become something that is so, it's a lot more definitive.
Hmm.
And not only is it more definitive, but it's something that is utilized in a way where I feel like people are kind of losing who they are, really. Like that grounding point. I think that people have become so used to playing different roles and different parts that you really haven't been able to center who you are in your identity. Because even though, like, I may act differently around my Haitian friends than I do around, like, my American friends, I'm still Monica either
Hmm.
way, like in either space, either form. And the way I act at home or the way I act when I'm working or in a professional manner, it's still me to a certain point. And I don't find like I don't put more stock in one person rather than the other because I don't feel like I'm losing any kind of sense of self. But I think that with the rise of the doppelganger, it brings this idea of like identity,
Hmm.
brings this idea of like who are we, what's our personality, like how do we define ourselves, how do we relate to other people, like who am I truly. I think that is like the question that's being kind of pushed
Yeah.
with the idea of like Mickey 17, with Severance, with Sinners, and with many other forms of media that utilize the doppelganger as a
Hmm.
narratives tool for the storytelling.
Hmm. I
Yeah.
agree. And I think it's kind of rooted in a little bit of fear, maybe
Mm-hmm.
from us as humans, this fear of like, how do we define ourselves? Because we are so many things at the exact same time. It's so difficult to say, I am this and only this, because it changes every day. You have to constantly change, or you don't have to, but we are constantly changing ourselves.
Yeah. That's very true. That is true. And we're changing ourselves to fit in. We're changing ourselves to be appealing to other people. We're changing ourselves to be seen as like appeasing or seen as kind or seen as, rememberable, or for just changing ourselves so people can like us, And it can get to the point where there's so much that you have adjusted or changed that you don't even know what you really like anymore. You just take the same interests as other people, and you don't really know what to define what it is that you're interested in. What draws you to certain things, like watching things on Netflix that other people watch just because it's what people are talking about, not because it's something that you actually enjoy, and not knowing what it is that you enjoy personally without having someone else's input to tell you what to enjoy.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't know if you keep up much with like UK influencers. I wouldn't expect you to, but there's this girl, it's a very recent topic, who was on Love Island. There's an American Love Island. And she was in like one of the really big couples, and they were together for years and years and years. And she very recently went viral because she came online to talk about how she doesn't want to be part of the baddie aesthetic anymore, and she wants to be more feminine and like more polished. And so everybody was just like, this feels like it's ringing towards the very like conservative trend that's going on at the moment. But yeah, she was essentially saying she doesn't want to be a baddie anymore. She wants to be more feminine. And she was essentially regurgitating talking points that she heard on TikTok, or it seemed to me. And I felt that way, but I was like, okay, whatever. And she recently broke up with her boyfriend and almost instantly made a video being like, guys, I'm a baddie again. I don't know what I was talking about. And like returned to her old aesthetic. It's bizarre. It's very bizarre. And so everybody's saying, oh, well, it must have been the relationship. Maybe her man made her feel this way. But I sincerely feel that there is a very strange commodification that's happening on specific identities. And because social media is so pervasive, I think especially younger people, although she's not that young, I think especially younger people are kind of being taught how to perform their identity, so much so that they end up flip-flopping between being one thing and another. And I think that's the really interesting thing about doppelgangers, right? We see these very contrasting identities existing at the same time, when in the era of social media, I do think a lot of people are battling with their own identity, and they're saying, well, no, I don't want to be the baddie anymore. I want to be super feminine and be one of the Pilates girls wearing Lululemon. But that's not who you are, right? That's not true to yourself. So next week you're going to jump identities again. It's really interesting. And I think social media on top of capitalism has done a very interesting thing to the way that we present ourselves just in our day-to-day lives.
I do agree with you on that. And although I don't know the influencer you're talking about, I feel like that is a trend I've been seeing a lot in social media, and especially in terms of fashion. Like, I'm pretty sure you know the fashion brand Pretty Little Thing, and how they've gone from like neon bodysuits to now like neutrals and like pencil skirts and cardigans. Girl, wait, did I step into Belk? Like, this feels like a Macy's. I'm in the wrong place. And looking at how people are kind of changing to fit like a different aesthetic, it feels like nobody has like their own personal style. Instead they kind of look to what influencers are wearing and what they're buying. Oh my gosh, it's like that Regina George clip where it's like, I saw Regina George wear these flip-flops, so I went out and bought the same flip-flops. It's like, you have no personal sense of like what you like to wear and what you like to put on and what you think looks good on you, because you feel like if Tate McRae is wearing this, then you should be wearing it too, because Tate McRae is the person that you want to emulate instead of finding out what works for you. And for the influencer that went from wanting to be super feminine to like being a baddie, it's like, girl, you might want to pick a lane and stick to it. Like, there's nothing wrong with wanting to be a baddie. There's nothing wrong with wanting to wear Fashion Nova. But like, if you wanted to dress more feminine and wear more neutral colors and be a little more modern and conservative because your boyfriend told you to, then like, yeah, dump him. Break up with him. Wear what you want, But, I wish so badly that people would just find their own like sense of style and their own like, aesthetic instead of just copying someone else's paper and hoping that that gets you the right answers to the test. Like it may not. It may not work for you. So then what are you going to do?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So this was a phenomenal conversation. I'm so glad we talked about this because I feel like it was so much fun. And when I was doing the research for this episode, I had not realized how many shows use the doppelganger trend, but exploring it and seeing like how all the lines kind of connect with these different forms of media was incredible and amazing. And I'm so glad that we were able to have this discussion, Kimberly. Just to wrap up the podcast, we're just going to go to our last segment, guys, which is Watchlist. We're going to talk about the movies and TV shows that we're excited to see that are coming out soon. And there are a few things that I'm excited to watch. One thing that I need to catch up on is White Lotus because girl, there's too much to watch on TV. And I had someone on the podcast just a few days ago. We were recording, and she basically spoiled a part of it for me. And when she told me a part of what happened, for those who don't know or are curious, it's something about brothers. And when she told me, I was fully shocked because even though crazy things have happened in White Lotus, I never knew Mike White was going to be saying like, you know what, let me pick up my pen and show the girls what's really going on because that's insane. That's actually wild. So it's now on my list to watch White Lotus. I have to log back into Max and finish that last season because obviously things are going on there. And I'm not gonna lie, like I saw the cast list. Whenever I see a new cast list and like there's not enough people of color on there, it's like, oh, okay, well maybe this is the season for me.
It's not worth it.
And Mike White said, no. You guys forgot. Like it's still going to be messy. I know it's going to be messy. So I have to clock in on White Lotus and finish that. And I don't think there's much else that I need to catch up on that's out right now. There is a new anime on Max that I do want to watch as well. It's called Lazarus. And it is the choreographer for the fight sequences in the anime is the same choreographer for the John Wick movies. And I believe one of the key animators or one of the directors for the anime Lazarus also works at Cowboy Bebop. And there are a lot of Cowboy Bebop influences there. And I do want to watch it. I do want to check it out. I've been waiting for this anime to come out for years. And I'm being so serious when I say I have been waiting for years. I have had a Google alert on this anime. And I've been checking in. I've been reading articles. I've been reading blog posts. I've been reading Reddit threads. Like, I was digging and scrounging for any kind of information I can get on it. But because it's a Max original, and also because of how the Uzumaki adaptation was not well received, I am nervous to watch Lazarus, but I am going to give it a chance because I do want to see how it is. And I'm always looking for a new anime to watch. And yes, and there's another anime that I'm excited to see called Moonrise on Netflix that I think is created by someone else who is a well-known director. It's someone who worked on Full Metal Alchemist. I believe it was one of the directors from Full Metal Alchemist worked on Moonrise on Netflix. There hasn't been a lot of reviews on the anime, and I think that it's being like kind of pushed down. I don't feel like Netflix is promoting it at all, because the only reason why I know this anime is being made is because I read an article saying that Netflix is hiding this anime. So I'm essentially going to watch this anime, and I'm going to start posting about it on my TikTok, hopefully to get other people to watch it, because I do want to give it a shot. The Rotten Tomato score is not favorable, but then again, I'm just going to give it a chance anyways, because, you know, we make our own opinions.
Exactly.
On we watch. Okay, I don't let anybody tell me what to watch. I watch what I want. Okay. Yes, but that's what's on my watch list. Kimberly, is there anything that you're excited to see? It's coming out soon.
Yes, I'm excited to see a lot of things. I think the first one I've already watched it. I went to a screening last week, and that's Another Simple Favor, the new Blake Lively film.
Ooh.
It's very, very contentious.
Mm.
I think that a lot of people are going to go into it with obviously their hatred for Blake Lively and
Yeah.
react quite negatively. However, I think it's a phenomenal film.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really fun. It doesn't take itself too seriously. It has, speaking of the White Lotus, it does have an incestuous
Oh,
situation that happens. I don't know if you watched A Simple Favor, but in
no.
A
Yeah,
Simple Favor,
I did.
remember that what's her name? Stephanie had that whole thing with her half brother, and it was like, ew, she had like a
Oh,
sexual
yeah, Anna
relation.
Kendrick?
Yeah, she had like a sexual relationship with her brother, and it was like they have another thing in this sequel, which I will not spoil, but I was like, girl,
Oh, Paul Feig is really pushing the envelope, huh?
he's pushing it.
He says, I don't
And
make comedies anymore. I make movies.
he's like, I'm here to have a good time. And the thing is,
Mm.
the film is it's not taking itself super seriously. So it's a lot of fun. And I really enjoyed it. I loved it. I think
Mm.
the Rotten Tomatoes score right now is like 88%,
Okay.
which I think a lot of people will be surprised by because they're
Yeah.
like, this is just a straight to Prime Video film. But it's genuinely, I really enjoyed it. Another thing that I'm looking forward to is Forever. I don't know if you've seen on Netflix. They
Is that the
have
Judy Blume
new,
TV show?
yes,
Okay,
the
yes.
show, yes.
I have
I'm
a
really,
reminder set for that.
I'm really looking forward to that. Yeah, I can't wait to see it. I hope it's really, really good, but I think it looks promising. Yeah, because the showrunner, she did Girlfriends, didn't she? She did Girlfriends and Being Mary Jane. So I'm like, I'll trust you with my life.
Oh my
Well,
gosh,
that's
yes.
the Girlfriends. So I'm excited for that. That's out on the 8th, I think. That's out next week.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is a new like college drama coming to Prime Video called Overcompensating. It's A24 produced, which I
Mm-hmm.
thought, wow, A24 doing TV. And it looks really interesting from what I've seen from the trailer and from the clips. I have seen a clip of Charlie XCX because she's one of the executive producers, I believe, and she's also like the music person. And she's in it. She has like a cameo, and the clip was going viral on Twitter because it wasn't very well acted. Let's just say
Ooh.
that. But the show overall looks really, really good. So I'm also very excited about that. That's coming out on the 15th, so about 2 weeks from now.
Isn't Oprah overcompensating? Isn't the lead a TikTok star?
I don't know who he is. I have to be honest. His name is Benito Skinner. I have seen him before, but I really didn't know who he was. Oh yeah, it says he's like Instagram, YouTube, TikTok
Mm-hmm.
star, content creator. I'd never heard of him. Is he big?
I think he is big, but I feel like he's one of those creators where he fits into like the general audience, kind of
Okay.
like big creator.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He's I think he's the one that wrote it, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just double check. Yeah, he created it and he stars in it. So it should be interesting. I think we need a good one. I don't know if you watched The Sex Lives of College Girls.
I think I started it, but I never finished it.
Well, that was recently cancelled,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't seem like it's going to be picked up again. So I'm like, I need a new drama, and it can't be Euphoria. Listen, I love you, Zendaya, but I can't do Euphoria as much.
Oh my
I can't.
gosh.
I just can't deal with Euphoria all the time.
Yeah. It's supposedly starting production soon or
Yeah,
sometime this year. I don't know how it's starting production because Zendaya seems to be booked
she's
up.
booked busy,
Yeah,
and she's acting like
yeah.
everything Zendaya has been in since Euphoria. I'm like, yes, she's doing incredible things. But yeah,
Also, A24, I believe they were also the studio behind the Netflix show Beef.
oh
So
yeah,
I am interested to see how overcompensating will go. I think it looks like a comedy because I do think I saw like a trailer for it, or maybe like I
yeah,
watched the trailer a while ago, and I don't remember last time A24 did a comedy. So I'm interested to see
yeah.
like how it's gonna go.
That's true. That's true. I hope it's genuinely funny. I want
Hmm.
to laugh. I think the last comedy that I really liked before the controversy was English Teacher. I thought English Teacher was quite good.
Yeah. That was a good show. I actually did enjoy the show, and I do remember the creator and the actor. He also made the web series The Wondrous Life of Caleb Gallo or Gallo. It was a YouTube series, and I feel like that's where he really like broke out. And I watched that when I was very young, and I really enjoyed it. And I think that the controversy that spurred from him, I actually had already, I had previously known about it because an article that linked to like a lot of details in talking about the controversy, it linked to like a Tumblr post, and when I clicked on it, I realized that I had bookmarked it before, and I was like, oh, I was like, oh, this is a refresher. Like, oh, that's crazy, because I think the Tumblr post is from years ago, so it was like something that was brought up, but because he has such a small and niche, not small, but such a niche audience, it was something that was very condensed to the internet.
It's just so disappointing. I really liked English Teacher. I loved it.
Oh yeah, I enjoyed this show too because I really needed another comedy to watch.
Exactly.
Yeah, because every time I try to watch Abbott Elementary, because my family and I, we share streaming services, it always ends up in like the last season or the last episode. I'm like, guys, I keep forgetting where I left off on. You gotta, like, please. Like, you gotta help a girl out here. But yeah, it was definitely disappointing to see that. And also, I feel like if you're getting a TV show or like, you know, you're getting like this huge deal and you got something like that in your past, maybe we need to get out in front of it before people find out. Because you can't expect people to not know.
Address it. Yeah, that's true.
That is ridiculous. Like, oh yeah, people won't find out. No one's gonna know. It's like, sir, you're on TV now.
They're gonna find out.
Yeah, someone's gonna say something.
Tomorrow. They will find out tomorrow. You're gonna go viral today. They will know exactly what to do tomorrow. Yeah,
that is crazy. Yeah. Oh, there is a show that I have been watching called Hacks. It's on Max. It's very, very good. You should check it out.
I will. I think I saw like a poster for it or something. I'm gonna write that down. Go watch that.
It's a show about this woman. Her name's Deborah Vance. She's played by Jean Smart. And she basically plays like this comedian who has this Vegas residency. And she hires a joke writer who's played by Hannah Ebringer. And Hannah is like typical millennial, lives on Twitter, you know, is all about being woke. And Jean Smart does not care about any of that at all. Like literally the least PC person you'll ever meet in your life. So seeing their differences and seeing how they contrast is hilarious because the way that they rely on each other and need each other and become like actually good friends is so interesting. And I've gotten to the point where like I'm in the current season 4. It's gotten to the point now where like their relationship, it's not even friends, it's like a strange codependency that like veers towards like, are you guys into each other? Like this is kind of like, it's a little concerning, but also like I can't stop watching it.
Oh, yeah. I'm gonna watch that.
Yeah,
that sounds really good.
It is very good. It's one of those shows I watch where I just watch the first episode. I'm like, I'm gonna give it a shot, and then I just don't stop watching it. I just keep watching it. I'm like, I need the next episode. I need next episode. Like my brain completely turned off. It's like I can't watch anything else. It's only this right now. That's how good it is.
That's literally the best feeling, though.
Yeah, I know. Kimberly, I want to thank you again for coming back on the pod. It was so wonderful to have you on. Where can people find you if they want to look you up on the internet somewhere?
So I'm primarily on TikTok. On my username is a bit complex to like explain, but it's Kimberly_Tsitsi. Tsitsi is TSITSI. And yeah, I'm on TikTok. Come and follow me. Let's talk about films. Let's talk about TV. All of that good stuff.
Awesome. Guys, I just want to say thank you again to Kimberly for coming on. It was such a pleasure to have you on the show. Guys, don't forget to go follow her on all her social media. It will be linked down below in the description. Don't forget to follow us on all our socials. Don't forget to subscribe to the Patreon, subscribe to YouTube, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky. And don't forget to listen to us wherever you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you like. And also, don't forget to tell your friends and family about your new favorite podcast. I've been meaning to watch that. I am your host, Monica, and I'll see you guys next week with a new topic and a new guest like we do every single week. Bye.